Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. One Piece. I have infinite devil fruit ability. Chapter 21. Really? Magellan smiled weirdly. Disgusting, are you starting to start? Hee, this is the beginning, I'll show you why it's called Advanced City more terrible than hell. Looking at Magellan's Satan-like face with a smile, like a demon's grin, and Fan smiled lightly and didn't pay attention to it. Magellan Anfin took it to Advanced City Level 1 and slowly passed by. The phone bug 1 to 30 surveillance space. There is a huge avenue, except for the cell door is brand new, the rest are rotten walls emitting a foul smell. And Fan couldn't help frowning, it stinks. In this to 30th space, the prisoners held here are basically prisoners who are about to prepare for the death penalty, because they have committed the laws of the world government outside, capital crimes. Especially in this place, although it is not a pirate or anything, these prisoners are all perverted and cruel. Magellan introduced this place with a smile all the way. In the gloomy prison cells on both sides, many bloodthirsty and red eyes were released, silently watching them. Anfin, in particular, was watched more. And Fan could clearly feel the joy, madness, excitement, and cruelty contained in these eyes. As if trying to tear him to shreds. What a bunch of perverts. And Fan's footsteps leaked slightly, his eyes looked around coldly, and then said coldly, he had an urge to gouge out all these perverted eyes. I'll take you to level 2. Quote, seeing Anfin's reaction, Magellan smiled cruelly. Couldn't be more than happy. Quote, follower Magellan, who began to talk about how to punish prisoners, such as sticking a needle into the prisoner's finger. As soon as he spoke, there was a sound of footsteps in front of him. Ha ha. Finally escaped from the terrible Red Lotus hell. Brothers, work hard, as long as we run through this avenue, we won't be too far from the exit. Ha ha ha. Naval Headquarters, Marin Vando. The Admiral hung up the phone empty, with a blue face. The Warring States General who was sitting on the side was a little puzzled. Marshal, what's going on? It's not a good thing anyway. Kapuha on the other side laughed. Shut up. Sengoku's face is full of black lines. There was a Major General who died. At that moment, Sora spoke. Sengoku and Carp were stunned for a moment, and a Major General died. So what? It's very usual. Indeed, in the Navy, in addition to the death above the rank of Lieutenant General will attract attention. The following is not very important. After all, there are only 16 Lieutenant Generals at most, and there are only 2 or 3 generals, and the number of Major Generals is different, at least 3 or 400. The level of Lieutenant Generals and Major Generals is a big divide. Among senior officers, the death rate of Major Generals is the most, so it doesn't matter much if you die. However, the bearish face is very ugly, and the Warring States think that things are not so simple. This Major General's death is very involved. Sora rubbed his temples. Just now the 5th Old Star personally called over and told him about Anfan, and asked loudly why the warship was passive, and asked him to investigate strictly and clean up some people in the Navy. In fact, even if the 5 Old Stars don't call, if they receive the news, they will investigate. After all, a Rear Admiral and 100 elite soldiers of the Navy are rarely attacked by the Sea King Beast, and then die inexplicably, especially according to Anfan, who was taken to the city in advance by the 5 Old Stars after 3 days, plus the Sea Tower stone machine on the warship that shocked the Sea King class is home, and the ghost knows what the problem is. Especially if he even falsely passed on the order of the Supreme Decision Maker. Just rushed this one. The 5 Old Stars were thundered and angry, and the hearts of the people sitting in high positions were already suspicious, and in the ancient times of Anfan's previous life, this was a big crime of falsely preaching the holy decree and punishing the 9 clans. After Sora was silent for a while, he said to Sengoku, Sengoku, there is something you need to do, you give it to me. The Holy Land of Marihoya, the realm of the Draco family. A middle-aged man with blonde hair and a white robe had his back to the man in black who was half kneeling on the ground. My lord, Rear Admiral Gel sank and all of them were killed, but Anfan did not die, and he arrived safely in Advanced City. Humanity in black. What's going on? The middle-aged man was stunned, a little surprised. This subordinate doesn't know. According to the people who advanced into the city, it was reported that Anfin fell from the sky at that time. Quote, devil fruit bearer from the sky. The middle-aged man was slightly stunned. My lord, according to our people, Anfan still talked to the 5 Old Stars after he arrived, but I don't know why I didn't hear the content. What did you say? Yes. Quote. The middle-aged man's tone became serious. During this time, don't do anything, this matter will definitely alarm the 5 old stars. Yes. Quote. On the 15th, you go and dispose of all the people involved in this matter, and the lieutenant on the ship of Major Admiral Jair, just in case, the whole family is killed, and there is no trace left. Quote. Yes. The man in black shuddered. Let's go down. Quote. Yes. Quote. After the man in black left, the middle-aged man muttered. This evil seed actually escaped the nirvana I set, and instead gave me an attack. I wanted to solve it casually, I didn't expect. Hee. I'm underestimating. The wind was blowing, and the erosive air was filled with a thick smell of blood. What do you mean? Magellan looked at Fan with a pale face, and the horror hidden in his eyes was hidden. In front of Magellan, hundreds of corpses were accurately beheaded, covered with scarlet blood, and just now, a group of hundreds of escaped prisoners were all killed with a single knife. That's right, it's a knife to kill everything, and the child who has been despised by him next to him has been killed with a knife. Oh yes, Director Magellan, as the ruler of Advanced City, you have such a large number of prison escapes, what are you going to eat? And Fan inserted the second-generation ghost Che with red light back into the scabbard, and said to Magellan with a smile on his face. A cold sweat ran down Magellan's forehead, and he felt the tremendous pressure on him from this weak body. Hearing Anfan's words, Magellan shed another drop of cold sweat. Before Anfan's words were finished, he said again, you said that if the 5 old stars knew about the situation here, what would they think of you? Anfan looked at Magellan suspiciously. Magellan was sweating profusely, and he felt that the pressure on him was getting heavier and heavier. Bang, bang. At this time, a pair of neat footsteps approached, and a large number of prison soldiers arrived, who were chasing the escaped prisoners. When they saw the target they were pursuing, everyone's eyes were shocked, and they all looked at Magellan in horror. What was going on? Why? Your Excellency the Director. One of the prison soldiers swallowed and shouted to Magellan. Magellan, who was being questioned by Fan, suddenly turned to the leader and said angrily, what is your name? Don't you see that I am talking to His Excellency, the special envoy sent by the world government? Your Excellency the special envoy. The soldier looked at Fan's harmless child's face in disbelief, but under Magellan's stern gaze, he had to salute Fan. Your Excellency, special envoy. Quote. All the prison soldiers saluted in unison. Fan waved his hand and let the prison soldier's hand go. He looked at the terrifying pile of corpses, and said indifferently, these people tried to escape from prison, but I caught them red-handed, and now they are all executed. Quote. The prison soldiers were a little shocked and looked at Anfan's body, which was less than 1.6 meters. However, Magellan used poison, and it was impossible to kill these prisoners in a way that was cut in half, and there was no one else here, only Fan and Magellan. Magellan could be discharged directly, and only Fan was the boy left, plus a knife on his waist, and looking at Magellan's expression, it was already obvious. Hiss, how is this possible? Quote. All the prison soldiers instantly took a breath of cold air. It turned out that it was this envoy boy who killed him, how violent this was, and it scared Magellan, a terrifying figure. Before the prison soldiers could think about it, an even more murderous order came out of Fan's mouth. I walked this way, and I was looked at by some garbage, and I was eaten by the eyes, and I was so scared that you were here, so please help me clean it up. Fan glanced at the prisoners crawling by the cell door on both sides. The Magellan prison soldiers, although Fan said something funny, but no one laughed. The prisons on both sides of this road are holding thousands of people. The prisoners who crawled by the cell door to watch the play were stupid. You can't do that. Quote. You don't have the right to do that. Quote. Please don't kill me. Quote. In an instant, all kinds of ridicule and insults sounded on both sides, and Fan frowned. There is not a single prisoner left on this road, do you understand? Fan's pupils shrank suddenly, his face changed instantly, and he said coldly to the stunned soldiers. The eyes full of murderous intent shocked the hearts of all the prison soldiers, and they subconsciously wanted to receive their lives. However, the head of the prison soldiers still knew who their boss was, and he didn't know how much power Fan had, so he didn't dare to despise executing thousands of people at once, but Fan's pressure was too great, and he knew from what he said just now that this envoy boy was a very murderous existence, so he had to look at Magellan for help. And so Magellanianism. Stupid. Your Excellency the Special Envoy of Anfin has been sent by the world government, and he has the supreme power to advance the city, and he can even remove him, so you don't dare to execute it quickly. Magellan scolded. But Your Excellency, we are not this layer. Why are you talking so much? If you don't carry it out, do you want to die? Magellan roared before he could react. Yes, yes, yes. The head of the prison soldier nodded again and again, and with a wave of his left hand, the soldiers under him directly raised their guns. His Excellency Special Envoy Anfin orders that all prisoners in prison number 1 to number 30 on Route 12 be executed immediately. Quote. It's time for Level 2 now. Anfin said lightly to Magellan. Is this the hell of Warcraft? The huge elevator opened, and Anfin and Magellan slowly walked out, looking at the prison in front of them and muttering, this level of prison is almost the same as the first floor, but the area is several times larger, and the prison room is empty, and there are man-devouring monsters dragging around. No, at this moment, a prisoner was captured by a sphinx's terrifying monster, and then, in a scream of horror and despair, was clucked off and used as the sphinx's rations, in a very bloody scene. Ordinary people are afraid that they will kneel directly when they see this scene. As if sensing someone watching it, the sphinx looked over, and the beast's eyes were full of hunger. When the sphinx looked over, the first figure that came into view was Magellan in a demonic suit, and his hair exploded in an instant, and his hungry eyes were impaired, like a mouse seeing a cat. The beast just now is gone. The sphinx has come here and seen His Excellency the Envoy of Anfin. Magellan shouted. The sphinx was startled, and his eyes moved slightly, and he saw a boy standing next to Magellan. When it saw that it was a boy, the sphinx was slightly stunned. It was also a wise existence, and when it heard Magellan's order, it ran over without hesitation. I've seen His Excellency the Envoy of Anfin. The sphinx, known as the Sphinx, came to him, sat like a dog, and then spoke. I can speak. Anfin looked at the giant beast in front of him with some surprise. Yes, after Dr. Begagank's method, all the warcraft of the advancing city beasts of the town guard have been developed into IQs, but because they can only be developed simply, and most of the rest still maintain the wildness of the warcraft, they can only stay in the advanced city, and they are not popularized by the world government. Magellan said. His name is Sphinx, and he is the boss of all the warcraft in level 2, and he is also the head jailer of level 2. Magellan said as he looked at the Sphinx, who was sitting like a dog in front of him. At this time, the Sphinx's perverseness was like a dog, and it was hard to believe that this demonic beast had just eaten dozens of people. Hee. Dr. Begabank is amazing, and I hope to see him in the future. Anfin smiled. He was more and more interested in this Begabank arc. How could a person be so smart? These monsters, if their IQ can be opened a little more, they will be perfect. It's a pity for the Association for Science and Technology. Anfin glanced at the Sphinx, said an inexplicable word, and then turned around and walked towards the elevator again. Your Excellency Director Magellan, how many people are in this prison? It's hard to count this level, but there should be 40,000 people. Quote. 40,000 people, what a lot of rations. How many prisoners are there in Level 1 Level 3? Level 1 Level 3 prisoners should be guaranteed a minimum of 150,000 people. Quote. 150,000 people. That's a lot. Anfin walked into the elevator and couldn't help but sigh when he heard Magellan's 150,000 yuan. What about Level 4, Level 5, Level 6? Level 4 has more than 10,000 people, Level 5 has more than 1,000 people, and Level 6 has more than 100 people. Quote. There are so many. Anfin is surprised. Nima. In the original book, there were only 10 prisoners on the 6th floor of the city, but now 15 years ago there were hundreds of them. Yes, Level 4 has a bounty of more than 50 million at the beginning, and Level 5 has a bounty of more than 100 million. Magellan said, many of these have been caught by the Warring States Generals recently. I heard that the Warring States Generals are going to be promoted to marshals, and after becoming a marshal, they can't often leave the naval headquarters, and the Warring States Generals may feel that they can't be the first to show their pawns in the future, so they began to desperately catch pirates, and in a few happy hours, the entire prison has reached the point of fullness. Quote. Especially Level 5 Level 6 holds so many terrifying hundreds of millions of bounty existence. I am very afraid of a riot. so I also set up a special office in level 4. All the high levels stay in level 4. If there is a riot on those 2 floors, there is also a buffer preparation time. The main force is placed on the lower 3 floors, which also leads to frequent prison escapes on the upper 3 floors, but there is no leader of the lower 2 floors. Despite the large number of people, none of them have failed and been suppressed. Quote, I hope that after His Excellency Envoy Anfin comes here, he can find some way to dissipate the current tense atmosphere in the city. Quote, and Fan blinked. He couldn't speak for a long time. The warring states were so crazy. Crazy to the extreme. I have a solution to the tension right now. Quote, what's the solution? Hee. Kill them all. Quote, Magellan's face suddenly turned black, and he killed them all. So is this still the advanced city prison? Haha, just kidding, just kidding. And Fan laughed and said, you take me to Level 5 Level 6, let me see these large collections of more than 100 million bounty pirates, such a rare grand scene. If you don't look at it, you won't see it in the future. Thanks for the tip of the fate of the other side. Level 5 Extreme Cold Hell. The prisoners on this level are all imprisoned in an environment that is colder than the Big Ice Vault, and their bodies are severely frostbitten until they die, and a large number of army wolves are raised in the forests of the frozen hell. It is worth mentioning that there are no phone bugs installed on this floor due to the low temperature. Level 5 Prison. The air is filled with an icy chill, and the entire prison floor is like an ice coat. Is this level 5? Asked Fan as he slowly walked out of the elevator. Yes, this is level 5. Magellan nodded as he looked at level 5, which looked like an island with all kinds of trees and houses. Phew, it's really cold. Quote, and Fan exhaled a breath of hot air and said with a smile, just now he felt a little hot from the furnace hell of level 4, but now it has become cold again. It is really 2 heavens of ice and fire. I don't know how this prison was built, and it can be built like this. Let's go, take me to see these pirates with hundreds of millions of bounties. And Fan said in a slightly mocking tone. Yes, Magellan nodded, looking at the prison house in front of him with a disdainful chuckle. These pirates were majestic, and they didn't expect that they would be imprisoned one day. A vain Magellan walked in the direction, and in a short time came to a prison house. Inside, the pirate prisoners were dressed in black and white striped costumes, and their hands and feet were chained, locking them to chains made of sea tower stone. The Halu stone chain can not only restrain the able, but also has the strongest hardness in the world, and the only ones who can shawl are masonry and stone. In this prison cage, there are 3 prisoners. Their hair has been shaved, and they have long centipede scars on their backs, which are estimated to have been beaten by the prison guards before being imprisoned. They look haggard and sit silently on the ground, like old men who have been struggling to breathe. When they saw Fan and Magellan, their eyes were instantly blood red, and the fierce aura on their bodies rose. Magellan Prison Director, I don't know what you're doing here. Are you going to execute us? The prison commissioner really looks up to us. Quote, the 3 prisoners spoke hoarsely, with surprise and disdain in their tones. HMPH, a swarm of ants. Magellan looked at the 3 prisoners coldly, although he was a little angry, but he didn't do anything. If he wanted to do it, the 3 prisoners would not be able to kill him even at their peak. Yo, and a little child, Magellan, is it your illegitimate child? A prisoner noticed Fan, and couldn't help but laugh, and laughed a little after speaking, but his voice was very hoarse, and his smile was very ugly. Ha. The 2 prisoners looked at Fan and immediately burst out laughing, and laughed at Magellan in a tone. Magellan, this is your child. Quote, I guess I didn't pick it up from a garbage can. Quote, and Fan's face was full of frost and looked at the prisoner indifferently. Do you dare to say it again? Yo, don't be imprisoned here, let's follow Magellan to eat poisoned milk. Before the prisoner finished speaking, he felt a pain in his neck, and then he felt like he was flying backwards. Bang. Quote, a bone shattered. The 2 prisoners' eyes exploded with horror and they looked at Fan, who had kicked their fellow inmate's head into a pulp. Good speed. Magellan watched in shock as he slashed open the cage and killed a prisoner, rushing in and smashing his head to pieces. At this time, Fan's expression was hideous, and he stared at the 2 frightened prisoners violently. You guys were smiling so much. Fan sneered like a killing god. No, we have no eyes, don't kill us. The 2 prisoners retreated in fright and looked at Fan in horror. They didn't expect this boy to be so terrible, and his head exploded directly. Nima. The hardness of the head is comparable to steel. What kind of concept is it to step on it? Ha. And Fan looked at the two prisoners contemptuously and sneered. Yes, we're garbage. The two prisoners nodded in panic. They were completely shocked by Fan's ferocity, and they were like two people with their previous fierce and tough performance. Fan sneered. The second-generation Ghost Che withdrew the scabbard, and looked down at his feet. The hem of the black suit pants was stained with a large amount of blood, and the small black leather shoes were even more bright red. MD, get my feet dirty. Fan said in disgust. You too, wipe my shoes clean. Fan glared at the two prisoners and snorted coldly. A hint of humiliation flashed in the eyes of the two prisoners. No matter how they said it, they were also sea thieves with a bounty of up to 100 million. The perceptive Fan directly captured this humiliation. It's your honor to let you wipe my feet and be a dog, but if you feel humiliated, then go to Hades and sue me, saying that I bullied you. Quote. After speaking, without waiting for the two prisoners to vent, a land foot was cut off, and the two were torn to pieces in an instant. Magellan outside looked at Fan, who used bloody means in a cold sweat. He was thinking just now, if Fan's knife that broke through the cage and cut off a person's head was aimed at him, he could not take it. The answer was yes, but the premise was that he had to react to the elementalization in time, even if the elementalization had to be attached without domineering, otherwise the elementalization would be in vain. In other words, if Fan's knife was domineering, he could directly kill him in seconds, and he couldn't catch it at all. It's really not a loss to be a person who is heavy on the 5 old stars. You can kill me in an instant at such a young age, and if you wait a few years, won't you be able to wipe yourself out with a snap of your fingers? Magellan thought to himself. Oh, it's a pity that my leather shoes have only been worn for a few days. Fan walked out and sighed, as if the cruelty in the cell was not his doing. Magellan stared blankly at Fan. Forget it, let's move on. Quote. Fan said casually. Good. Magellan nodded dumbfounded. Level 5 Level 6, among the more than 1,000 people, do you have any devil fruit abilities? Asked Fan. Hearing this, Magellan frowned when he heard this, although he didn't understand why Fan asked this, but he still said honestly, it seems that there are hundreds of devil fruit abilities, but I have forgotten what the specific ability is. Only a few of them are impressive. I remember, I need to look at the archives to know. Quote. Impressive. Fan's heart moved. Among the hundreds of capable people, which few can make Magellan remember, it is definitely not a simple thing. Magellan nodded and said, Magneto Eric Lanchel, who is imprisoned at level 6, has a bounty of 420 million, eats superhuman magnetic fruits, and has the ability to control all magnetic fields, and his strength is very terrifying. Quote. The mind thief Hilton Barney, who imprisons level 6, has a bounty of 460 million, and eats a superhuman psychic devil fruit, which has a very terrifying ability and can control or affect people's minds. Quote. Magnetic fruit, spiritual fruit. Fan was a little dazed. Well, the strength of these two people is very terrifying, and it was only with all the strength of the Warring States General that they were suppressed. Magellan nodded. The fruit of the mind, which has the ability to control and affect the mind. Fan's heart is shocked. What a terrible fruit this is. The human heart has been very terrifying since ancient times. If you can get this ability and control people to affect their hearts, then Fan will not be afraid to betray all calculations, but can also carry out counter-calculations, which is a very powerful weapon. Especially if you want to form a force. According to this mental ability, it is simply an artifact, such as using divine help. In an instant, Fan's mood was a little hot, and his breathing became a little short. I want to get the ability of psychological fruits. I want to get the ability of psychological fruits. Your Excellency Special Envoy Anfin. Magellan saw that Anfin's reaction was suddenly a little strange, and he couldn't help but remind him softly. What's the matter? Fan came back to his senses suddenly. Shall we continue? Said Magellan. No, let's go directly. Fan said subconsciously. Just halfway through speaking, he stopped abruptly. He thought of something. Psychological fruit. This has such a terrifying power to control people's hearts. The 5 old stars must also know that if they rashly go forward to devour the soul fruit ability, they will definitely get the blow of the 5 old stars at that time. After all, this is the power to control the mind, and wherever it is placed, it is an object of fear. Especially the 5 old stars are at the peak of power in the world. No matter how strong they are, they don't have anything, but they are still afraid that their forces will be overthrown or killed, so they are always on guard against the people around them, and once they threaten their rule, they will definitely not hesitate to kill them all. And now the most important 5 old stars know that the soul fruit ability is locked up in the level 6 layer. If they know whether an fan has copied or devoured that ability or not, the 5 old stars will be suspicious. After all, an fan has obtained the highest power in the city, and all the prisoners' information is owned, especially level 6, a very important prison layer. The 5 old stars will definitely see it. Thinking of this, an fan felt a little regretful. If he didn't tell the 5 old stars about the copying ability, he wouldn't have to be afraid of the 5 old stars. But if he didn't tell the 5 old stars, he wouldn't be able to get attention, get privileges, and get the supreme power of the advancement city, but in this way, he wouldn't know that the owner of the soul fruit was imprisoned in the advancement city level 6. Nima. I'm not human anymore. I thought that exposing a whole card would make the 5 old stars get attention, but Nima ended up falling into a big pit, and I still dug a hole and jumped into it by myself. Nima. I'm Sao, I actually dug a big pit. Magellan watched Anfin's face change back and forth, red, white, and blue, as if he was doing some strenuous exercise in his heart. Your Excellency Special Envoy Anfin, what's wrong with you? Magellan looked at Anfin with some strange doubts. From what he said about the devil fruit ability just now, His Excellency Anfin's special envoy became a little strange. What's wrong? Magellan looked at Anfin suspiciously. Anfin was reminded by Magellan's voice, and when he saw Magellan looking at him strangely, his face changed slightly but quickly disappeared. Magellan didn't see the moment of Anfin's weakness. After all, Magellan's strength was not as strong as Anfin. You said we were going there directly? Magellan asked, and Anfin stopped abruptly halfway through his speech just now, which made him very confused. Now Magellan has doubts in his heart. Anfin looked at Magellan's doubts, his eyes condensed slightly, and a cold light flashed. Nima. Did this Magellan find something? If he hadn't killed him. In an instant, Anfin subconsciously moved to kill Magellan, but it was quickly extinguished. Come in a hurry, go in a hurry. Let's not talk about whether you can kill Magellan. Even if you do, a prison warden who eats natural fruits is killed by him like this. He will definitely face the reproach of the 5 old stars, and when the time comes, there is a chance that he will contact the person with the ability of the psychological fruit. In a word, the gains outweigh the losses. Your Excellency Anfin. Seeing Anfin in a daze again, Magellan was even more puzzled in his heart. What the hell is going on? It's okay, I just remembered something. Anfin said casually. As long as he was not a fool, he could see that he was fooled. Magellan was puzzled in his heart, but he didn't ask much because of Anfin's identity. As if he had made up his mind, Anfin said, let's go to the 6th floor of Levay. I want to meet this mind devil fruit ability. Quote. Anfin he decided, it turned out that he would be buried by himself before and after. It is better to gamble, bet that the 5 old stars will not always pay attention to this prisoner who advances the city, and he doesn't know this spiritual thief Hilton Barney. If you win the bet, you will stay in the world government, and if you lose, there is no way. See him. Magellan was stunned for a moment, and then said with some surprise, Your Excellency Envoy Anfin, this person is very dangerous. Although he was wearing a closed helmet made of sea building stone, the strange psychic power did not know if he was not restrained. In the process of escorting him, although the Warring States general said to be careful, but one of the prison soldiers who escorted him suddenly went crazy in level 4 and jumped into the magma, and we couldn't react at that time. Anfin was stunned when he heard this. It was so terrifying. Then he wanted to get the power of this spiritual fruit, even if he sentenced the world government. Of course, this is the next strategy that can only be made in a desperate situation. Take me to him. Anfin's tone was full of non-doubt. Ah, Magellan was in a quandary. Take me there. Anfin looked at Magellan indifferently. This is my order. Quote. The Holy Land of Mary Joy, the headquarters of the world government. The office room on the top floor where the 5 old stars live is still simple and full of atmosphere. Elder 5 Elder Stars, Admiral Sengoku has sent a document for approval. A government soldier in a black suit walked in and said. The 5 old stars with long straight hair took the papers. What kind of document is it? The white-robed 5 old stars wondered. I'll take a look. Ha, the soul fruit ability has been captured, and now he is imprisoned in the city, and he asks for a way to deal with it. Spiritual fruit ability. Psychic fruit ability. Imprisoned and pushed into the city. All the 5 old stars were stunned in unison, and then looked at each other. Stop. It is not allowed to pass without the order of the Sengoku general. On the passage on the 6th floor of Levay, there are Navy soldiers dressed in white holding their hands. Ha, Anfin looked at Magellan suspiciously. Magellan said embarrassedly, because level 6 suppressed too many people, I asked the Warring States General to keep some soldiers here to guard. And Fan was stunned for a moment, and then said coldly, there is nothing. Magellan's body froze suddenly, and he didn't say anything. And Fan looked coldly at the naval soldier who was blocking his way and said, I am Fan, the special envoy of the advanced city sent by the world government, and I now ask to pass level 6. I'm sorry, but the order of the Sengoku general is not allowed to pass. The naval soldier stopped the gun and said coldly, the military quality is not ordinarily strong. I am the special envoy of the world government, and now I am in charge of the supreme power of the advanced city. You dare to stop me, are you not afraid of being killed? And Fan's pupils shrank, and he said in a cruel voice. Forehead. Under the pressure of Fan's strong momentum, the naval soldier took a step back, but finally insisted. I'm sorry, but we're Navy. Not the Navy. The Navy is what I hate the most. And Fan grabbed his neck and said coldly. Without an order from the Sengoku general, it was not allowed to pass. The Navy soldier had a hard time breathing, but he still insisted on not letting Fan pass. What a good soldier. And Fan sneered. Syllable. And Fan reached out and twisted his neck, causing the righteous Navy's life to completely dissipate, his eyes so cold that there was no emotion, as if he had pinched an ant to death. What are you doing? At this moment, a thunderous explosion sounded. I saw the place in front of me. Out walked a muscular man dressed in the uniform of the righteous Navy, with amazing muscles all over his body, like a big man, and at this time the big man was staring at Fan angrily with his eyes. Fan looked at the big man and said indifferently, Lieutenant General. Level 6. Fan lowered his head, took out a piece of cloth and inserted the blood on the 2nd generation of ghosts. He was willing to kill too many people, and the entire 2nd generation of ghosts exuded red light. Your Excellency Special Envoy Anfin, you. Magellan looked at the naval corpses all over the ground in horror, and he knew what to say. Is this Fan a person sent by the world government? How can he kill the Navy? And if he has the audacity to kill a lieutenant general, 3 rear admirals, and hundreds of elite naval soldiers, he is not afraid of being arrested and tried. If the Warring States General knew that his subordinates had been killed so much, he could imagine how angry he would be, and the 5 old stars would not be able to protect this Fan at that time. It's a real problem, there are so many naval soldiers guarding this place, I've already lost. Hey, I've lost, Fan said coldly. Your Excellency Anfin, what are you talking about? Magellan did not understand. Because you don't have anything, I'm going to betray the world government. Fan looked at Magellan coldly. Magellan looked at Anfin in shock, he heard it right. The Holy Land of Mary Joy, the headquarters of the world government. Why did this Warring States General only send the documents over now? The long-haired 5 old stars had a blue face and threw the documents in their hands to the ground. The person with the ability of the soul fruit, this kind of evil fruit that controls and affects people's hearts, was actually caught, and sent to be imprisoned in the advancement, saying, why didn't this matter be reported earlier? What's the use of saying more now? Call Advanced City to immediately recall Fan, and immediately execute those with soul devil fruit ability, such a person should be executed directly. The white-robed 5 old stars said coldly, and their tone was a little dissatisfied with the Warring States General. It's just that the 5 old stars in the white robe also know the intentions of the Warring States Generals, hoping to imprison the soul fruit ability. After all, once the soul fruit ability person dies, there will be another soul fruit ability outside. If you choose to imprison it, then there will not be a factor outside that controls people's hearts and affects the stability of the world government. Thinking of the soul fruit ability, a trace of jealousy appeared in the eyes of the 5 old stars. Control affects people's hearts. What should Fan do if he copied the ability of the soul fruit? A 5 elder star asked lightly. Of course, it's killing. A trace of killing intent flashed in the eyes of the 5 old stars and said, Fan has the power to copy any ability, which is already very against the sky, and with the power to control people's hearts, the sky can't tolerate it. As for whether an fan could or whether he had the ability to copy the mind, they didn't want to investigate, they only needed a suspicion. This is the Shogun prison. Where are Magellan and Anfin? Let them talk to me. Ah, it's the 5 Elder Star Elders, and I'm Hannibal, the deputy director of the Advanced City Prison. Less nonsense. Yes, Mr. Magellan is on his way to level 5 with His Excellency the Envoy of ANFAN, and I will call him at once. Not necessarily. You lead the people forward to capture Anfin, his identity is now lifted, and you can kill him if necessary. Ah, the 5 old stars hung up the phone gloomily, then thought about it, and picked up another snail. This is the headquarters of the Navy. Dash 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 dash. Level 6 Infinite Hell. The criminals are too vicious and erased from history. The criminals in this layer are very strong guys, and there are 2 ways to end up with death or life imprisonment. And Fan entered the prisoner's detention area, looked at the red eyes staring at him with malicious intent left and right, and said with a chuckle. He sensed how powerful the chi and blood of these imprisoned prisoners were, boiling like a tiger in the mountains and a lion in the grassland. What a monster person! What a monster person! And Fan's bright eyes swept around and muttered, although this level 6 prison is dark and does not show 5 fingers, but it is only for ordinary people, for the strong, their facial features and 6 senses have already been strengthened with the boiling chi and blood energy on their bodies. Level 6 Infinite Hell Prison is a small prison area, just more than a dozen individual cells lined up on both sides, and all kinds of people are held inside. Why? Because it's not just humans, it's also so-called fish people. And Fan glanced at the prisoners next to him. There were probably no more than 100, less than 100, their whole bodies were a little sloppy, their hands and feet were hung with halu stone, their movements were restricted, and their faces were a little embarrassed, as if they had experienced some big war. These prisoners were silent, no one spoke, and they all looked at Fan quietly, which made people feel a kind of creepy. After all, these people are famous people on the sea. In the words of Dio C, almost 100 big guys are estimated to be blind if they keep an eye on him. And Fan was very uncomfortable, feeling like a needle prick in his back, and these eyes were full of malice, evil intentions, bloodthirsty, hatred. All kinds of negative emotions. And Fan stopped, frowned and said coldly to these people, "I'd love to gouge out your eyes and feed them all in your stomachs." Quote, boy, you are so cruel. I smell the strong smell of blood on your body. Boy, did you kill people just now? A middle-aged man dressed in black, with his hands and feet locked in the cage, smiled at Fan. Do you have a relationship? Said Fan with a black face. Boy, I don't know who you are, but from the strong smell of blood on you, you must have killed a lot of people in the Advanced City Prison, so I'm sure I'm definitely not from the Navy or the world government. Quote, if you can let me out, I can hand over to you the wealth I have accumulated over the decades. Quote, the middle-aged man said so many words that his intentions were finally revealed. Boy, I know there is a great treasure on an island in the sea. Let me out, I can give you the treasure map, I can guarantee that there is more in it than this guy's wealth. Quote, let me out, I will repay you, I am the president of a big chamber of commerce, I will give you whatever you want. Quote, die, don't listen to him, this guy is specialized in the slave trade, I am the king of XX country, let me out, I will give you countless wealth and monstrous power and beautiful women. Quote, don't listen to this guy, he is the tyrant of the XX country, now the country has been overthrown, let me out, I am from the XX pirates, there are tens of thousands of pirates under my hands, and I control a large number of islands in the New World, if you let me out, I can give it to you. Quote, quote. The words of the middle-aged man are like a stone stirring up 1,000 waves, and level 6 prison is now like a vegetable market, each BT is more than every one of them, and countless empty promises are made to Fan. I don't want your stuff, I want to know where the mind thief is. Fan said lightly, and suddenly all the prisoners in level 6 prison were quiet, looking at him quietly, and then their eyes looked at a room. You're a mind thief. Fan looked indifferently at the cell, and there was only one man inside who was locked by Halu Shi and wearing a Halu stone helmet. Are you? The mind demon thief raised his heavy head slightly, although his head was closed by the helmet and he couldn't see Fan face clearly, but the power of induction made his heart clear. When Fan just wanted to ask the next sentence, he suddenly felt dizzy in his head, and subconsciously stretched out his right hand in a daze to hold the handle of the second generation of Ghost Che, and when he held the second generation of Ghost Che, a strong murderous aura entered Fan's body, and the amazing murderous aura instantly woke up Fan. You dare to manipulate me. Fan's eyes widened instantly, and he looked at the mind thief fiercely. He was almost affected by the control. The psychic power I have accumulated has not controlled you at all. The voice of the mind thief exclaimed from the helmet, full of stiffness, incomprehension, and doubt. You go and ask Lord Yama. Quote. Fan said sharply, and after speaking, the second generation ghost in his hand cut through the cage and walked in with a face full of anger. After a while, a terrible voice sounded. The mind thief is dead. All the prisoners affirmed in their hearts, and after a while, Fan, who had blood on his face, walked out expressionlessly. Humph. Fan showed a cold sneer on his face, and all the prisoners were shocked in their hearts, and for some reason, there was a trace of fear in their hearts. He's just a hairy child, how can I be afraid of him? All the prisoners asked themselves in their hearts, to calm their hearts, all of them were all delusional, no one would know, just now there was a trace of terrifying strange power penetrating their hearts. Where's Magneto? Fan asked calmly again, his tone calm with a hint of magnetism. What are you looking for me, is there anything going on? As soon as the words fell, a rugged man in one of the cages cried out. You're Magneto Eric Lancel? Asked Fan as he stepped in front of him, looking at the rugged man in his tank top leggings and wounded all over his body. That's right, I'm Magneto Eric Lancel. What, are you going to kill me? Magneto sneered and looked at Fan. I don't know why, he couldn't suppress what he had in his heart. The bounty is 420 million, I heard that your strength is very good, how about being loyal to me? Fan suddenly smiled, his tone was full of a strange power, which made Magneto in a trance. No, good, would I? Bursts of strange power hit his mind, Magneto's eyelids grew heavier and heavier, and the moment they closed, he fell to his knees. What? Magneto actually surrendered to this little ghost, I was not mistaken. All the prisoners' eyeballs are shocked. Nima. Is it good for you to surrender to me? Fan's voice suddenly looked at them, and his voice was loud, full of a strange temptation, which made their hearts lose their minds for a while. No, I'm the XX King is supreme, I won't surrender. I am willing to surrender. Surrender. The prisoners in level 6 prison were in a trance, closed their eyes, and knelt down on their knees in unison. The corners of Fan's mouth hooked up a smile, and he spread his hands and said, this is the power of the soul. Quote. Ulla. At this moment, an alarm sounded, resounding throughout the advanced city submarine prison. After putting on his shoes at the door and saying goodbye to Shizuka who was following him, Chu Mushin went out and went home. Maybe because of his subconscious exercise every day intentionally or unintentionally, Chu Mushin was always hungry faster, so now Chu Mushin was not ready to hang out and go home directly to have a hot meal and prepare for dinner. Although Chu Mushin can also cook, the original body is also the same, but Chu Mushin's mother will always prepare dinner in advance, unless the time is too tight to catch up with Chu Mushin will let Chu Mushin cook by himself, so Chu Mushin doesn't need to buy vegetables or anything, just go home to eat. Shizuka's house is not very far from Chu Mushin's house, so Chu Mushin arrived home quickly, took out the key and opened the door. It was dark and deserted inside. Because on the way back from Chu Mushin, the sky was almost completely dark, so he turned on the light casually. Looking at the empty house, Chu Mushin shook his head and felt that his popularity was still too deserted. In fact, Chu Mushin had been in this world for 3 or 4 days, and the time he had seen his parents was no more than 3 hours in total. Casually put homework and sketches and other things on the table, Chu Mushin took an apron and surrounded it, and prepared to heat up the meal. Eating cold rice and cold dishes will cause diarrhea. After eating, it's time to go back to the room to write homework and read books. Of course, now Chu Mushin is ready to drive out the rest of the sketches and submit them after school tomorrow. Life is a race against time, it's not good to drag everything around, and because of the habit of the original body, Chu Mushin still writes a diary every day, no more, no less, but Chumushin also had the habit of writing a diary in his previous life. This doesn't matter. Chumushin took the diary casually and flipped through it. Chumushin looked at the back pages of the diary and was stunned for a moment. It was full of some graffiti and some very childish curses. Anyway, Chumushin couldn't stop laughing. Just this trace could never be painted by Shizuka, and the only way to draw graffiti to the diary unconsciously was Nobita with the help of Doraemon's props. Smiled and shook his head. Chumushin didn't take the child's graffiti to heart, but people always have to pay the price for their actions or pranks. At least let Nobita know that he already knew that it was the graffiti he scribbled, so as not to continue to prank in the future. After all, Doraemon's props are still very troublesome to deal with, and it is not impossible to accidentally catch the road. Nobita, wake up. It's time to eat. Doraemon frowned and looked at Nobita, who was still sleeping. He was still sleeping when he was about to eat, and there was a see-through sticker observation machine with his back to him next to him. Doraemon patted his head and remembered that he lent the props to Nobita and forgot to take them back. I don't know if Nobita took the props to play pranks again. Sometimes Doraemon admires Nobita for being able to play all kinds of tricks with his props, and Nobita has to be said to be a genius in this convenience, although he often causes a bunch of troubles because of props to Doraemon to wipe his ass idiographic period. Ah, it's Doraemon. Doraemon, you're back. Nobita looked at the blue figure in front of him with sleepy eyes. Nobita's mood was much better after sleeping, and he didn't find anything special in Chumushin's diary, such as his love for Shizuka, so Nobita directly forgot about it after sleeping 108,000 miles away. Nobita, are you playing prank with my props again? I really don't know what tricks you can play with the see-through stickers. I don't care if I take the props away. Doraemon said as he looked at the prospective sticker viewer with his back to him, and said that Doraemon didn't feel anything because he didn't see the graffiti that Nobita had scribbled on the front. Hearing Doraemon say this, how could Nobita be willing? And finally he could complete his homework so easily, but he couldn't let Doraemon take it away, and he forgot to wipe the graffiti on it, and he was found by Doraemon, and he must be angry again, and it was very bad for borrowing props next time, so he hurriedly pushed Doraemon out of the door. Doraemon, you go to dinner, I'll come over to eat later, and Doraemon, you talk, this prop is going to be lent to me to play for a few days, but you can't talk and don't talk, hurry up and get out. Nobita closed the door and exhaled lightly. Finally hiding it, Nobita looked at the graffiti on the perspective sticker observation machine. And found time to wipe it clean tomorrow. Now put it in the closet first and put it in the homework that will continue to be used to copy Shizuka tomorrow. Thinking of this, Nobita suddenly became happy again, and the feeling of being able to copy homework every day couldn't be happier, and the teacher can forgive Nobita for being late for a few minutes as long as Nobita finishes his homework well, so that there is no need to be punished for being late. Nobita snickered when he thought of this. After putting the perspective sticker observation machine, Nobita jumped down to eat. Chumushin turned on the light in his room, sat at his desk, and began to draw the manuscript, and the diary was put aside by Chumushin, because it was a mess drawn by Nobita, and it was not easy to write a diary, and Chumushin didn't plan to write a diary today, just a little more time to draw comics. It's always easy to forget the time when doing one thing seriously. For example, I don't even know that my parents are back, but Chumushin's parents didn't bother their son when they saw Chumushin drawing comics so seriously, and slowly closed the door. As long as Chumushin can consciously go to bed, he won't be late for bed, and his grades can maintain the top 3 in the whole grade. Chumushin's parents are still very supportive. Chumushin has a little other hobbies. After all, there are many skills, and he is not pressing. Chumushin stretched his waist and finally finished painting. If other well-known cartoonists knew that Chumushin had finished drawing an episode in 3 days to ensure the quality and plot of the story, they would have to stare at him in surprise. In fact, the cartoonists in this world are slower than Chumushin imagined, and it basically takes a month to finish an episode. Sometimes if it is urged, the quality of the plot will decline rapidly, but this is none of Chumushin's business. Chumushin is not ready to develop in the comic industry. Chumushin is just ready to earn some tickets for his own use. No money is absolutely not possible. Now that Chumushin has finished painting, he has sorted out all his things. Because it is still early, it is only 9:30. Chumushin walked downstairs to prepare to take a hot bath, and then went to bed. Looking at the TV in the living room, he knew that his parents were back, and hurriedly went in to say hello, but maybe he was not completely accustomed to his identity, so he didn't talk for long. Chu Mushin took the opportunity to take a bath and sleep. How confused and panicked are the prisoners in the level 6 prison after being arrested here. People are afraid of death, and no one dares to say that they are not afraid of death. After all, people die like lights go out, and everything has turned to ashes. Now that they are liberated, they urgently need to vent the anxiety in their hearts, the anxiety of waiting for death, and the best thing to vent seems to be to kill people, to hide the fear in their hearts with those blood, the fear of death. Everyone's eyes were blood red, they shouted to kill, their expressions were excited, the monstrous shouts of killing, the tone was full of monstrous hatred. Under the oppression of so many monster levels, the surrounding air was condensed, and the walls next to them were trembling, as if they would collapse at any time. You dare to escape from prison, you are guilty of more crimes, and you should be put to death. Magellan roared, shoot me. Quote. The prison soldiers behind him were still aiming their guns, and a middle-aged man's body suddenly rioted, and his upper body turned into a leopard's muscular body. His body was like a building, and he jumped high and jumped directly into the prison soldiers. His fingers changed into a huge, and he tore it in the air. Poof. Quote. 3 deadly blood marks appeared on the mouths of several prison soldiers, and they died immediately. I'm going to kill you. Ah. And Fan looked at it with a sneer and said, it turns out that the serious injury is still there. I thought you were resurrected with blood and blue on the spot. Quote. Don't be complacent. I will definitely bring you to justice. You dare to kill the prisoners released by the Navy level 6, you must be executed. Magellan said sinisterly. Kill me, I don't know if you'll ever see that day. And Fan said indifferently. Leave him alone, he's just a paper tiger now. You kill all those ant soldiers and release all the people imprisoned in Advance City. We're going to carry out a prison break riot. Quote. Anfin ordered, and all the prisoners bypassed Magellan one after another, and carried out a very horrific massacre of those prison soldiers, which was total. How dare you? When Magellan heard Anfan's words, his emotions suddenly became excited again, and when he saw the level 6 prisoner slaughtering his soldiers, he wanted to stop it but was powerless. Do you know how many criminals will get away with it, and how many ordinary people will be harmed? What does this have to do with me? I'm not the savior. And Fan said indifferently, he is now going to face the blow of the world government. How can this be without cannon fodder in front of him? If the more than 200,000 lives in the prison can be exchanged for his life, it is worth it. All the lives of the world, except for me and my important ones, are as lowly as dogs, and they can all die. And Fan said. You, Magellan's eyes widened, and he thought so horribly, is this still a man? This is the devil. I'm not a devil, I'm a human being. I'm just an ordinary person, who only has important people in my heart. And Fan smiled, and then he was a little sad, as if he remembered something from the past. Magellan looked at Fan in shock and said, how is this possible? How do you know what is in my heart? Hee, it's a secret. And Fan held a sea tower stone chain in his hand and looked at Magellan with an evil smile. Ha, Magellan's pupils shrank. Nima. Dash 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 dash. Boom. A thunderous explosion exploded in the prison. They must not be allowed to get out of here. The prison soldiers shouted sharply with their guns pointed at them. A person who rushed out first of level 6 saw this situation and smiled coldly. A group of ants, praying mantis as a car. Quote. Boom, boom, boom. The power of a punch of thunder, a punch with the power of the terrifying wind and clouds, directly smashed towards the prison soldiers in front. A strong air flow impacted, the soldiers in front of them were instantly shocked like confetti, directly smashed on the prison wall, spitting blood, all the internal organs were injured, and it is estimated that they will not live long. The master ordered that all of them should be killed. One of them roared excitedly, his eyes filled with crazy bloodlust, and a sharp finger flashed in an instant, and the bodies of the 5 prison soldiers stiffened, and their necks were like bursting water pipes, and scarlet blood gushed out. Kill. Another person casually smashed the head of a prison soldier, his brain cracked, and blood flowed down like a column, and all the prison soldiers looked frightened, and the belated fear in their hearts finally arrived. The prisoners of level 6 are terrible, we are no match at all. Quote. Run. Quote, under the horrific killing, they finally broke down and couldn't stand it anymore, and turned to run away, but were they promised? Have I allowed you to escape? Magneto looked coldly at the collapsed prison soldiers. Boom. As the prisoners of Level 6 attacked Level 5 and liberated the prisoners on this floor, they began to fight up in one breath under the strength of the most terrifying prisoners in the advanced city, and the prisoners in it were unsealed every time they conquered the next layer, and the number of prisoners who escaped was like snowflakes rolling bigger and bigger. This was not a prison escape at all, it was a real riot, and it could destroy the riot in the advanced city. This riot is enough to make the future of the city unforgettable. This is the most humiliating history of the city, because the entire prison of the city is almost completely destroyed. A large number of buildings have been destroyed. The prison soldiers are losing one after another, the dead and wounded are heavy, blood and mutilated limbs are flowing everywhere, and under the anger of these prisoners, the blood is flowing. This situation, even if the Golden Lion escaped from prison a few years ago, is not so destructive. These guys are so naughty. Anfin held Magellan, who still had his last breath left, and walked up step by step, along the way with the blood of the stumps of the prison soldiers who were torn apart by the anger of the prisoners. Phew. Magellan's whole body has been stained with blood on the ground, covered in suddenly sticky blood. Seeing the scene all over the ground, so many subordinates being brutally killed, his heart has been extremely sad and angry. The source of all this is caused by this man, this devil. You're kind of killing me. Magellan coughed up a mouthful of blood. He was already dying. Under the two violent blows of Anfin, he couldn't do it, he really couldn't do it. I killed twice, and your life is really too hard and too big. Quote. And Fan said, the two blows to this Magellan did not die, which made him speechless. Originally, he wanted to cut off Magellan's head, but Anfin admired his stupid courage very much, so he planned to give Magellan another way to die. A cruel smile curled up at the corner of Anfan's mouth. In order to prevent Yu Shaoqiang from coming back to life, I plan to send you to that furnace in Level 4's scorching hell, and you will have to pay for your own stupidity. Anfan said with a sneer. Magellan was stunned, and he suddenly felt that the pain in his body was gone. Ha! Anfan's footsteps suddenly leaked, and his eyes glanced slightly at a corner, as if he had found something. Ha ha, the people who push into the city are really straw bales, ha ha. Quote. Anfan showed a sarcastic smile, and then carried Magellan away with a rampant grin. When Anfan's figure disappeared, a head stretched out from the corner just now, looking at the direction of departure in a daze. Your Excellency the Director. Quote. Above the calm blue sea, a white mist rises and the surroundings are vast. Suddenly, 10 huge warships with seagull flags appeared, moving forward at a breakneck speed. This is the City Master Prison. Now ask for support. Ask for support. Level 6, Level 5, Level 4, Level 3 prison has all been lost. Level 2, Level 1 what kind of riot, it has been somewhat suppressed, now ask for support, ask for support. Quote. We're coming right away. You have to persevere, we must not let them continue to break through, continue to break through. We're coming right away. On a warship in the center, a rear admiral shouted at the snail in his hand. We can't stand it anymore, they're attacking, attacking. No, don't kill me, ah. Before the words were finished, the snail's side lost its voice, and some only had the sound of a terrifying fight. The surrounding naval soldiers listened profusely sweating. Warring States General. The rear admiral looked in a cold sweat at a man in front of him with a pair of frog glasses, a long beard tied into a twisted shape on his chin, and a Navy official dress and a Navy admiral's trench coat. This man is currently the Admiral of the Navy, the Sengoku of Buddha, and will be the Marshal of the Navy in the near future. At this time, Sengoku was full of seriousness, looked ahead and said coldly, how long do we have to get to the advanced city prison? Report to the Sengoku General. We still have about 10 minutes to drive to reach the advanced city. The Major General said. Warring States waved his hand and said solemnly, this is too slow, when we dare to arrive, those criminals have already broken through the Chinda prison and snatched the warships that are moored, and we must arrive in 5 minutes. Quote. Warring States General, if you drive too fast, it is estimated that it will attract the attention of the Sea King. Quote. With me here, are you still afraid of the Sea Kings? Warring States looked at the Major General with his pupils shrunken. Yes. The Major General swallowed. The Sengoku General ordered, all warships turned on at full speed and moved forward at full speed. Quote, equals 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 equals. Advance to City U prison. Kill. We're almost at the exit. We can finally get out of this city. Quote. Oh. The prisoners in black and white stripes with swords in their hands excitedly looked at the bright exit in front of them. The big world was outside, and they were finally about to see the sun. They also died a lot of people along the way. After all, the weak prisoners have the advantage of recuperating prison soldiers, but fortunately, they also have an advantage, and the number of prisoners in the prison is as high as more than 200,000, and they can use the tactics of the sea of people to kill a bloody way, and there are many powerful existences. Shoot. Absolutely not, let them through. Quote, in the middle of the gate of the city, there were a large number of prison soldiers, neatly holding their guns at those prisoners, but there were too many prisoners, and there was still blood all over their bodies, like demons returning from hell, staring at them with a cruel smile, looking at these prison soldiers with a trembling heart. Their foreheads were covered with sweat, and the guns in their hands were trembling. Kill them, they keep us from seeing the sun, and we're going to tear them to shreds. A man covered in blood roared with a knife in his hand, looking very crazy. Kill them, kill. Angry roars and crazy voices shouted, and all the prisoners rushed forward with their knives in their hands, cracking and roaring like a flood. Shoot. Quote. Boom. The blazing flames in the furnace were raging, full of domineering terror, as if everything in the world had been burned to the end. Anfin grabbed Magellan's bounty in the sky, staring at the frantically burning flames below with an indifferent expression. Magellan, who was seriously wounded, was caught in it with all his weakness, and looked at the violent explosion below, like a flame about to devour him, and his forehead was covered with sweat. I don't know whether he was hot or frightened, maybe one of them, maybe both, as for which one only he knows. It's hard like Xiaoqiang, and I don't know if this can kill you. Anfin despised Magellan. The flame in Magellan's eyes flickered like hatred in his heart. You're going to die a bad death. Quote. Don't you want to die? The corners of Anfan's mouth raised slightly, and suddenly the green tendons on his forehead burst out, and his little face was hideous and gloomy, and he threw Magellan into the furnace. I'm so bad that you can't see it, Anfin said violently. Magellan plunged into the raging flames like a meteor, and in an instant was engulfed by the scorching poisonous fire in it, and a miserable scream of pain rang out. And in less than a few seconds, there was a crackling sound in the flames, and the terrible sound disappeared from close, and the furnace returned to the same as before. It's up to you to see if you die this time. Anfan sneered coldly. At this moment, a voice full of grief and remorse sounded. Anfan twitched his head slightly, and looked at this man wearing the hat of the Egyptian pharaoh. His stomach was swollen like a demon, and he was holding a long knife in his hand, crying bitterly. What are you pretending? I didn't dare to come out when I hid to the side just now, isn't it too late now? Anfan glanced at this Hannibal with cold eyes and said sarcastically. Hannibal didn't hear Anfin's words, and complained to himself, Director, if I had stood up, you might not have died, you would not have died. Quote. Director, I will definitely carry out your will, and I will not let a prisoner escape, and protect this advancing city. Hannibal's expression suddenly became stronger, and he pointed at Anfan with a long knife. You fool, you have caused such a big crisis in the city, I will not let you go. Quote. Do you know you're stupid? Said Anfin, who looked at Hannibal casually with his little finger in his ear. You don't even have the qualifications to let me use a knife. Quote. I can advance to the deputy commissioner of the city prison. Quote. When Anfan heard this, he immediately sneered and smiled, as if he had heard some joke. Even if he looked so strange, he spoke so strangely. I'm in a good mood all of a sudden, and if you get out of the way, I'm not going to kill you. Anfan said. I won't let it, I'm an ambitious man. Puff. Hannibal's face was full of confusion, and he felt a red slit around his neck, and suddenly, the red slit exploded, and the red viscous body continued to squirt out. Anfan turned his back to Hannibal, blood dripping from his fingertips, and said with disgust and indifference on his face, HMPH. Give you a chance to live, if you don't know how to cherish it, then it's better to die. Quote. After saying that, He walked forward quickly. He wanted to catch up with the prison escape riot force as soon as possible. Equals 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 equals. You prison soldiers, let me die. Quote. At the entrance to the city, the prison soldiers fought with the rioters. One of the prisoners took a large knife and smirked off the head of a prison soldier, and before the prisoner could be complacent, a gun was pointed at his head, and with a bang, he also died. You sinners bury me here forever. Quote. If you want to get out, step over my corpse. Quote. Long live justice, long live the Navy, long live the world government. Quote. I don't know why, the prison soldiers are getting braver and braver. And the fear of such a large number of riot prisoners gradually disappears. And they begin to become crazy. Swords and swords collide, and the prisoners are also very heavy in casualties, and the morale begins to be a little weak, and it takes an average of 5 to 7 prisoners' lives to kill a prison soldier. After all, the prisoners only eat every day to ensure that they do not die, and they cannot reach food and clothing at all, especially if they have to suffer punishment every day. They are already extremely weak. Once this sharp energy begins to dissipate, the madness in their hearts will disappear, and their mood will become impatient, and what they want is to return to the world of sunshine and freedom. Instead of following these prison soldiers to die desperately, they just want to live, and when the time comes, they will not fight with these prison soldiers, thinking about escaping, becoming a plate of loose sand, and gradually being wantonly slaughtered by prison soldiers with high military quality ideographic period. Especially the bloody corpses along the way. Half of the more than 200,000 of them had already died just when they came to the entrance of the city, and most of them were killed or exhausted due to physical prostration, or trampled to death. Oh no, things are going wrong. Magneto frowned and looked at the tragic battle. He found that the knife in the prisoner was getting slower and slower, and there was no madness before, and the advantage on the entire battlefield actually began to turn into a disadvantage, and the disadvantage actually began to turn into an advantage. The remaining prisoners, who were more than a dozen times the prison soldiers, actually began to retreat. Brothers, we have one last step. As long as we take it, we will win, and we can return to that free and bright world, instead of staying in a narrow dark space. Magneto shouted, and with a wave of his finger, the blade fell to the ground as if it had been controlled, instantly killing more than a dozen prison soldiers. Magneto's performance stimulated the side of the prisoners' forces and danced high. Brothers, it's Magneto, a sea thief with a bounty of 400 million, with him, we will definitely be able to kill the entrance to the city. Quote. Oh, kill it, rush. Quote. Phew. Quote. Looking at the prisoner who had returned to his previous madness, Magneto gasped. His forehead was already covered with sweat. Running from level 6 to level 1 was physical work, and killing all the prison soldiers along the way was even more physical work. Even if he was at the peak, it would be very tiring to run so far and kill so many people, not to mention that his physical strength weakened to the bottom a little in prison. In fact, level 6 almost 100 monster level prisoners are also similar to Magneto. Otherwise, with their terrifying power, it is enough to crush the prison soldiers in front of them, mainly because they listen to and fans words too much, liberate all the prisoners, kill all the prison soldiers, and consume too much of their physical strength. No, I can't stand it, I can't stand it. Quote. A prison soldier gasped. Shelling, bombarding them with warships. Quote. This will destroy the city of Advance. Quote. I can't manage so much anymore, I really can't stand it, and more brothers can't stand it. Quote. Everyone, back and start shelling. Quote. The commander of a prison soldier shouted. What, they want the warships to shell? Brothers, hurry up. Let them shell us and we'll be finished. Magneto's face turned to the side, and he roared fiercely. Kill. At this moment, the prisoners were stimulated again, and became even more crazy. This place is so small, if the shells fall on it, will they still have a way to live? Oh no, they're crazy, get out of here. The chief's face changed dramatically. As soon as the words fell, a cannonball suddenly hit, and more than a dozen soldiers and prisoners were all blown to pieces. None of our people have yet to withdraw, why the shelling? The chief yelled angrily. But soon someone answered his question. Oh no, it's the Navy. There are 10 warships. A prisoner shouted as he looked at the confused white mist in front of him and gradually revealed 10 large warships. What? The Navy is coming. The faces of all the prisoners changed wildly, and they all trembled. Open fire. The warring states on the warship looked at the advanced city and said with a cold and serious expression. Yes. Boom, 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 boom. A cannonball fell at high speed, advancing into the city's sturdy facilities, and was directly blown to pieces, and the debris of the explosion directly killed countless people. Especially here is the dense crowd as the main position of the battle, a huge stone or a cannonball down. The number of deaths is very amazing. Within a while, the surrounding collapse, the ground is covered with all kinds of stumps of blood and flesh. The power of gunpowder is extremely terrifying and bloody. Let's withdraw. The naval warships have arrived, and we have failed. One of the prisoners looked at the stumps on the ground with a pale face and took a step back. 10 naval warships blockade. We are late, and it is over. What to do, what to do? I knew I wouldn't have participated in the prison break. It's over, this time it's going to be lost. Quote. The prisoners of the riot began to retreat continuously. Their morale was extremely low, and their hearts were full of fear as they watched the naval warships that were constantly shelling the distant sea. Boom! A shell landed on the entrance with unmistakable accuracy, and with a violent explosion, more than 100 people died on the spot. No, no, everybody run into the city. Quote, the death of these hundreds of people directly made these prisoners collapse, even crawling and rolling to run into the advanced city, just saw the bright sunlight they have to return to the dark space. They are unwilling to now is not the time to think, they are just thinking about running for their lives, fleeing for their lives. They think that running into the advanced city, they will not be hit by the Navy's cannons. Stop me, do you know that there is only one way to die if you run into the advanced city? Shouted some of the prisoners. Don't these fools know that returning to the push city will make all their efforts go to waste, and they will face a 100% mortality rate, because the entire push city will be slaughtered by them, and the world government will never let them go, and they will all be executed. But no matter how much they shouted, they couldn't stop it. These people collapsed under the guns of the naval ships. Magneto's forehead was covered with cold sweat and looked at the prisoners who kept fleeing, and he hated that iron does not become steel. TMD, they are all straw bales, a group of big straw bales. What are they doing? The prison soldier chief looked pale at the 10 naval warships that were constantly firing cannons. Did these Navy know that they were still here? Run, 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 hurry, hurry. The prison soldier commander gritted his teeth, waved his hand loudly, and turned around and ran away after speaking. The explosion of the shells falling next to him made him tremble. He hated why his mother didn't give him an extra pair of feet. Boom, 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 boom. Every 10 shells always fall on the advanced city prison. Each shell takes away the lives is very amazing. Just 1 minute of shelling, more than 1,000 people died, and even one shell fell on a warship in the advanced city, directly exploded in half. The soldiers on the warship were directly sent into the sea by their own people to feed the Sea King. Navy number 1 warship. Can the warring states generals stop the shelling? And if we go down any longer, our own people will be killed by us. The major general came to Sengoku and said. Sengoku frowned and looked at the advanced city. At this time the surface of the advanced city had been blown into various concaves and bumps, one of which was blown up, and there were dead and wounded everywhere, and the 10 warships that protected the advanced city were sunk by mistake, and 3 warships were blown up, emitting billowing black smoke. As a wise general, he values the overall situation first, and then the present. This shelling, the warring states knew that it would hurt his own people, but he still gave the order to shell. He knew that if so many prisoners successfully escaped from prison, the consequences and harm would be incalculable, and how much to pay would be dozens of times that of today, and the occurrence of this kind of thing could not be tolerated. Giving up the small for the big, and giving up the small for the big can be the overall situation of the warring states, but he is not the kind of warring states who is really ruthless and puts interests first, and can give up who by any means. If this is the case, he is not worthy of being a wise general, and he will not be supported by more than 80% of the Navy, nor will he be recommended as the next Marshal of the Navy. It is the overall situation of the warring states to give up the small for the big, and the small for the big, but his overall view is that the big is also small, first the big and then the small. The two are equally important, only before and after. Both are equally important, but there is a front and after. Closing parenthesis. Stop the shelling, the warships are at speed, all the navy is ready, and all the prisoners of the riot in the city will be killed. A hint of murderous aura appeared in the eyes of the warring states. These criminals dared to riot and kill, they were really impatient. Yes. The Major General saluted. Equals 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 equals. Boom. With a violent crash, the naval warship directly leaned on the edge of the advancing city, and a large number of Navy officers holding big knives and wearing Navy trench coats walked down, with murderous expressions and indifferent expressions, exuding a strong and elite atmosphere. They were all elite soldiers of the Navy headquarters, and their military ranks were at least at the rank of an officer. This time the situation was so serious that the Navy headquarters directly dispatched 1/5 of its headquarters forces to suppress it, 1 admiral, 3 vice admirals, more than 10 rear admirals, and 3,000 headquarters elites. Do you know what you were doing? The prison soldier commander asked angrily as the Navy boarded the city. This is the order of the warring states general, you can find him if you have something. Quote. A Major General looked at him indifferently and said. After speaking, he didn't look back, holding a long knife and leading a team of headquarters elites to take the lead in entering the dark hole in the city, directly ignoring the bloody corpses covered with stumps below, and did not react at all, as if he had become accustomed to it. Seeing that this Major General was indifferent and arrogant, this prison soldier commander had no choice, he was a warring states general. So many brothers did not die at the hands of the enemy, but died at the hands of his own people, and he felt extremely sad and indignant. Curse you to be like my brother. The chief of the prison soldiers looked at the back of the Major General leaving with resentment, and said with hatred in his heart, he didn't dare to complain about the warring states general, because his strength and identity were there, but what kind of general are you, a Major General? I grant your wishes. Such a sentence suddenly appeared in the heart of the prison soldier, and before he could react, the terrifying scene appeared that he would never forget. Whoa. Quote. I saw a long red light flash suddenly, hundreds of heads shook high, and scarlet blood washed the prison soldier's entire face. The prison soldier chief was stunned, and all the Navy was shocked. Ha. Quote. And Fan took the second-generation Ghost Che, and looked at the Navy that was shocked by him with a cold and evil smile in his eyes. Navy, you are frightened, this is my gift to make you frightened, how about it? Behind him, a large group of prisoners with long knives slowly walked out, their eyes blood red, their expressions hideous, full of murderous intent and madness. A group of straw bales, so many people have killed almost 150,000 people, and they are about to succeed and collapse, don't you know that they are all dead? All the navies stared blankly at the neat and loud prisoner behind and Fan. What was going on? Wasn't it a collapse? Why can it still be organized? Could it be said that the collapse just now was faked? How is this possible? The Navy and prison soldiers were full of bewilderment, and only Sengoku alone knew why. I see, have you copied the psychic fruit, and have you manipulated psychic abilities to reintegrate these prisoners? Warring State's eyes narrowed slightly, looking at Fan, who was extremely rampant, and remembered what the 5 old stars had said to him before departure. That Fan ate the replicating fruit. I estimate that he will copy the soul fruit ability, this time to advance the city prison riot. It is very likely that he caused it, in order to prevent the discovery of a terrible enemy of the world government in the future. I want you to kill him at all costs. Quote. This is the 5 old stars to tell him, asking him to kill Fan, no matter what the price is, there is no way. Of course, if the 5 old stars knew that Fan was eating infinite fruits, it is estimated that not only the warring states would come, but also another Z general and a marshal. After eating such a wonderful fruit, why did you release all the prisoners in the city of Advance and kill them on a large scale? Standing on the opposite side of the world government, wasn't it good before? It's a pity. Warring States is full of pity for Fan in his heart. In order to prevent an extremely dangerous figure from appearing in the future, I will definitely kill you again. Warring States looked at Fan's control of his mental power, and piled up the 100 naval heads beside him. His face was suddenly black, and his fists were clenched. Brothers, let's either go to the world of light and freedom, or we will go back to hell forever. The second-generation ghost in Anfan's hand was slightly clear, and roared angrily. "Oh, kill out!" Quote. The prisoner raised his sword and looked crazy, and his eyes were crazy and bloodthirsty and rushed towards the navy, rushing towards those warships, and the momentum was extremely huge. "The power of the mind," Sengoku said as he glanced at the crazy prisoner, his heart gloomy. "How can a group of minions be the elite opponents of our headquarters? Kill me. I don't know how high the earth is thick with garbage. Do you really think that you can kill us with a knife in your hand? I'm the elite of the Navy headquarters." Quote. "We were able to defeat you before, and we can defeat you now." Quote. The Navy looked at so many people, and a drop of sweat flowed down their heads, which was a little shocking, but they were not vegetarians, they were the elite of the Navy headquarters, the strongest force in the Navy. How could they be frightened? And it has always been their Navy that took the initiative to challenge, but now they are being challenged by the defeated generals of the past, and this humiliation is extremely embarrassing for everyone in their Navy. Kill. The elite of the Navy headquarters directly raised their knives and collided with the prisoners, the sound of swords colliding, the sound of roaring, and the sound of blades entering flesh. In an instant, fighting began again at the entrance of the Push City prison, and countless corpses fell to the ground again. "Give me death." One of the Navy's elite sneered as he tore through a prisoner's mouth with a single sword, and the horror inside spilled out. According to past experience, this prisoner should be dealt with directly by him, but what he didn't expect was that this prisoner was very crazy. Even if he was seriously injured, he actually held his last breath, inserted the knife into the elite body of the Navy, and went to Wonkwan together. This elite Navy couldn't believe he was hanging up. This is just a microcosm of the battle between the Navy and the prisoners. Many of the prisoners are actually from the outside powerhouse, but their madness of exchanging one life for one life or 10 for one life made the Navy elite suffer a great blow at the beginning. The Warring States general's pupils shrank slightly. He couldn't stand it anymore. His eyes were unusually sharp and looked at Anfan, who was sitting on a corpse. "Give me to kill him." Quote. Boom. A tall vice admiral with a cigarette in his mouth entered the battlefield, and with a punch, a crack appeared on the ground, and the powerful compressed air flow directly smashed more than a dozen prisoners in front of him into minced meat, and his strength was extremely strong. And Fan, who was watching a real-life live-action movie, suddenly moved his eyebrows slightly, as if he sensed something, and looked at an invincible vice admiral who rushed forward, and the direction in which the vice admiral rushed forward was here. "The target is me. You really look up to me. There's a lieutenant general." And Fan chuckled, full of disdain and self-mockery. "Kill this kid, he killed so many of us just now." Quote. At this moment, several elite Navy officers unexpectedly appeared near Anfan, looking at him with bloodthirsty eyes. Even the creeps came. Quote. Boom. Quote. The second-generation ghost in Anfan's hand suddenly shook with force, and the strong air flow around him surged, and the Navy that rushed towards him was directly shaken away, and the powerful impact directly caused them to shatter their internal organs and limbs. "You abominable little imp." Quote. The Lieutenant General Lot also came here at this time, and when he saw this scene, his pupils instantly shrank, and with a roar, he waved his hand hard, and a high-speed wind blade appeared, slashing straight at Anfan quickly. What a Lieutenant General! Lan Zhao, one of the 6 styles, is so proficient that he can replace it with his hands. It's a pity that it's still a little bit benzene, because it's too slow. Anfan's head turned slightly, and the extremely fast wind blade cut a hair, directly dividing the half-human high boulder behind it into 2 halves, and the cutting surface was flat and smooth, as if it had been cut by the sharpest thing in the world. Seeing that his tricks were easily dodged and ridiculed, Lieutenant General Lot was a little angry. He felt as if he had been greatly humiliated. A little ghost, did he really think that he was invincible when he killed a major general and hundreds of soldiers in one breath before? "I'm still very unconvinced that you are not good at learning, and I wanted to teach you, forget it." Quote. And Fan shook his head and said. Suddenly a finger was raised, and the whole body rioted, turning into a blast of wind. His fingers were like swords, and the target was directly at the throat of Lieutenant General Lot. Finger gun. The face of the Warring States, who was watching the battle from a distance, suddenly changed greatly, and he sensed that Anfan's fingers seemed to be blending into nature, and this kind of fusion with nature had nothing to do with pure strength, completely relying on a general trend, crushing the opponent with momentum. Just like a great swordsman, each sword has an incomparably powerful momentum, crushing the opponent. How can it be so powerful? Lieutenant General Lore's face was full of horror. He felt as if he was all locked by a void chi, and no matter where he hid, there was no way to dodge. Bang! A terrifying finger gun shot out of thin air, without any chance of reacting, slashed directly through Lieutenant General Lore's throat. Puff! Scarlet blood sword. Lieutenant General Lore, dead. Chapter 31. Bang! Looking at the fallen Vice Admiral Lore, who was not blind, all the Navy was suppressed, and a Vice Admiral died like that. With the power of one finger, they killed Lieutenant General Lore in seconds, as simple as killing an ant, which made them unbelievable. Hey, I'm not mistaken, am I? A Navy elite said with a cold sweat on his forehead. Who is this guy? Why is he so powerful here? He actually killed a lieutenant general level figure in an instant. Quote, I know who this guy is. This guy is the champion of the Holy Land of Death. He is a very terrible and cruel guy, and all but one of the people who played with him were killed by him. What? This man is so cruel. How old is he? You fools, you can't protect yourself, you dare to talk. A tall and weak prisoner suddenly appeared on a Navy elite, raised his knife and slashed at it, and in an instant, a huge head flew up. Warring States looked at Fan sneering in the distance with a blue face, and before he could react, Lieutenant General Lore died like this. If he had reacted earlier, there would have been no such thing, and the entire Navy would have died like this. It was 15 years ago, and the previous 10 years were wrong, and they have been corrected. You fool, I'm not going to let you go. Sengoku roared angrily. He died at my hands, it can only be regarded as his lack of skill, who can blame him? Fan sneered and looked at the angry Warring States. You can't be left behind. Quote, the whole body of the Warring States period suddenly enlarged, exuding a violent golden light, like an angry Buddha. The whole body was amazingly powerful, exuding monstrous anger. The airflow on the surrounding void swirled wildly, and layers of dust and ash were stirring around. It's really a Warring States. Fan's expression became a little serious. Phew. Quote, suddenly, Warring States disappeared in place, turning into a golden afterimage, and a strong sound of breaking the air sounded in Fan's ears, appearing directly in front of him, and the huge golden Buddha fist shattered. What? Fan's pupils shrank slightly. What an amazing speed. The surprise in his heart was not over, Fan felt a pain in his mouth, and in an instant, he was like a kite that had lost its line, and with a bang, the cement wall next to it was directly smashed out of a human-shaped pit. The soil splashed, the dust dispersed, and Fan half knelt on the ground, panting. His face was covered with scarlet blood, and several bones on his body were directly shattered. But fortunately, Fan has the ability to restore the fruit and can heal quickly. The strength of the Sengoku generals is truly amazing. Fan looked at Warring States coldly and said, Marvel. Quote, Warring States shouted angrily. It turned out that it couldn't be a blow, so let's strike again. Boom. It was like a thunderous explosion. Boom, boom, boom. The Warring States shot as the power of the thunder, a punch of golden light with the power of the wind and clouds changing color. A golden shock wave directly towards Fan rolled away, and where it passed, the rock steel bars were directly shattered under the shock wave, and the power was huge. You must know that 15 years later, the power of this move will directly hit the Blackbeard who has the dark fruit and the shock fruit of the Warring States. I didn't react to the reason why you hit just now because your speed was too fast, but now I. Fan sneered and looked at the golden shockwave that was quickly rushing towards him in front of him, and the second-generation ghost in his hand suddenly slashed diagonally, and the golden shockwave flashed a red light. Boom! The earth-shattering explosion rang out, and the hard concrete floor cracked into countless deep ravines. The Navy and the prisoners, who were relatively close, were also directly affected, and their ears were bleeding, and the bone marrow of their internal organs and bodies were shattered. When the smoke and dust cleared, a huge crater appeared, and the huge wall of the city prison shook and collapsed under the explosion, and the surrounding walls were even more cracked with dense spider patterns. Where did you go? Warring States stared. He didn't see Fan's figure. Although this explosion could destroy Fan to ashes, he wouldn't be stupid enough to think about it. Behind you. An extremely indifferent voice sounded. The bruises in his arms exploded, and his fists came in an instant, bombarded with a powerful air current, like a heavy cannon. Iron, heavy punch. Quote, feeling the fierce wind behind him, Sengoku's face changed slightly, and he hurriedly retreated, and at the same time quickly turned around to resist this ferocious punch, but as soon as he collided, a huge force was transmitted, and he was instantly repelled by a powerful force. And Fan, I didn't expect your strength to be so great. I can't resist you with the power to transform. I really underestimate you. I see that you have been using a sword, and I thought your swordsmanship was the most powerful. Sengoku's eyes were gloomy and uncertain, and his whole body was condensed with the power around him, ready to attack. My greatest strength is not my swordsmanship, but my own strength. Quote. And Fan's face was hideous, and he said with a sneer, his feet shook on the ground, and the hard cement slab ground suddenly cracked open like a biscuit, and one after another amazing cracks spread, at least 5 meters in radius, as if he had been smashed on the ground by a boulder. He has devoured ants before, obtained its genes, and if necessary, he can burst out with 100 times the strength of his body, and the huge and terrifying power is naturally more powerful than swordsmanship, especially when he also knows the first physical skill in One Piece, the Navy 6 style, which is like divine help. Boom. Suddenly, and Fan's feet stomped suddenly, and his body suddenly rushed out like a sharp arrow, and the two fists smashed into the body of the warring states like two heavy hammers. Boom. As Fan jumped, his whole body was full of air currents rolling into an afterimage swimming around, the sound of the fist breaking the air fist, and the people who were less powerful couldn't see his figure clearly at all, and would only see an afterimage passing through the air. Although you surprise me, it is still not enough. I will not let you go if you do such a thing. Warring States snorted coldly, and Fan's strength is amazing, but he is still absolutely sure, because he is a general, the highest combat power of the Navy. This is conceit and self-confidence. Boom. The whole body of the Warring States was so angry that the golden light shook so brightly that people couldn't open their eyes, and the powerful and turbulent force stirred this airflow more and more violently. Humph. And Fan snorted coldly, and directly bombarded him. The two of them were constantly fighting to the death. Each of their moves was with great power, and their fists controlled a powerful airflow in the fight, and they were colliding fiercely, like two tornadoes in a strong fight, and the momentum was huge. The power of each blow, the concrete floor under the ground is as if it has been trampled by monsters, revealing amazing ravines and splashes of rubble. Not many of the surrounding navies and prisoners dared to enter the battle circle of the two, and once they got close, they would be strangled on the spot by the powerful air current. This was already an inhuman-level battle, and it was not something they could interfere with. They were shocked by the horror of the Warring States, and they were also shocked that Fan could fight against the Warring States at such a young age. Although they were shocked, they did not forget what they were doing. They were in the midst of the big fight, and they were slightly distracted that you were dead or alive. There is no room for distraction. Distraction is a dead. Is this still a human being to the point of being perverted? After a lieutenant general wiped out a prisoner, he looked at Fan, who was at war with the Warring States, in a cold sweat, and his heart was extremely shocked. The lieutenant general's eyes suddenly glanced inadvertently, and he noticed that a figure was rapidly rushing towards a warship, and his face changed drastically. No, he's going to grab the warship, stop him. The lieutenant general shouted angrily. What? Warring States, who was at war with Fan, was shocked in his heart, and his movements suddenly leaked slightly. Fan seized the opportunity and kicked with all his might, directly kicking the huge angry Buddha Warring States a few meters away. Then Fan stared at the lieutenant general with anger on his face and snorted coldly. The knife at the lieutenant general's feet seemed to be conscious, like an arrow off the string, directly into the lieutenant general's mouth, piercing his heart. You fool, you dare to lie to me. Quote. The roar of anger, shame, resentment, and grievance sounded in the Warring States. How dare you lie to me? Quote. Warring States looked at Fan, who was blocking him with cold eyes, and the golden light on his body became brighter and brighter, showing the monstrous anger in his heart. He was deceived by a small trick, and he was hit by the voice. He was really a wise general. Warring States looked coldly at a team of tough criminals in the distance who were fighting all the way and quickly rushing towards the warship, and smiled at Fan's anger level with frost on his face. You are really so bold. You dare to come and lure the enemy in person. Quote. Looking at the angry Warring States, Fan smiled lightly, wiped the blood from the corners of his mouth, and said, Hee. I really deserve to be a wise general. I was discovered by you in just a while. I really deserve to be a Warring States. If I hadn't copied the ability to restore the fruit, it is estimated that you would have been able to kill me with 3 punches. Quote. Humph. Warring States snorted coldly, and he sneered at Fan. If you actually come to lure the enemy in person, then you will stay here forever. As for those prisoners who escaped, there are few who can escape. Even if they do, how many will they do? They are far less harmful to the world government than you. I let you be smart but be mistaken by you. Quote. Sengoku has now decided to give up those prisoners and start targeting Fan, because he feels that Fan's threat is really getting bigger and bigger, and if this kind of person is not destroyed this morning, there will definitely be a super strong person who will shock the world in the future. Especially now that Fan is only 10 years old, he can already fight on par with him, although Fan's recovery ability has made a lot of efforts to help him recover from his injuries, but this kind of demonic genius is not a member of the world government, and it is better to die young. Hearing this, Fan chuckled, and he said to the Warring States, "The Warring States General, I'm really a little flattered. You really think too highly of me. I'm just a little smarter than ordinary people, and, the Warring States General, although I admit that you are very interested, I can't beat you, but you want to suppress me forever." As he spoke, Fan floated quietly slightly, holding the second-generation Ghost Che in his hand. Warring States' expression moved slightly, and he said coldly, "I forgot, you also copied the ability of the mental power fruit. You can only control all the substantive things, even yourself. Just now you killed Lieutenant General Kemi, you used mental power. Not to mention that Lieutenant General Kemi is fine. As soon as he says it, the killing intent on the Warring States is a little stronger, and another Lieutenant General has died. Bringing 3 Lieutenant Generals actually died, and they were slaughtered by this Fan-like garbage. This person is really too harmful. No matter what the price is, Fan must be left here forever, otherwise it will be an absolute nightmare, a nightmare in the future. No way. Who told this guy to be so careless, and was simply killed by me? Can I be blamed for this? Hey, if you want to blame him, he was killed by a knife I controlled. Fan shook his head. When the Warring States heard Fan's words, his face suddenly turned slightly pale. What kind of expression is this? Seeing that the Warring States were a little excited, Fan was a little puzzled and asked, "He was killed by me with a knife, isn't it a straw bag?" Okay, good teeth, I hope you can pick up your teeth in front of me," Sengoku said angrily. Quote. Fan looked at the angry Warring States, the corners of his mouth hooked, revealing a sneer. Killing that Lieutenant General Kemi is of course not just a simple knife. Fan first instantly impacted Lieutenant General Kemi's mind with his psychic ability, making him slightly distracted and unresponsive, followed by a sharp knife with additional mental power to directly break his defense. You must know that this kind of attack has been fought against the elementalized Red Inu. It can hurt, break a Lieutenant General's physical defense directly into his heart, and it is not easy to kill him in seconds. Don't look at a small trick, in fact, there are a lot of articles in it. Warring States General, my people are almost about to take the warship, but I'm leaving. Fan glanced and found that the strong team of prisoners had already attacked a naval warship, and directly grabbed the food and snatched it. As I said, if you dare to take the initiative to seduce me, then you will stay here forever. Quote. Warring States said angrily, his eyes flashed, his big hand was raised, and the momentum slapped directly towards Fan, a huge golden Buddha palm, like a galaxy of vast super Fan's head bombarded away. Fan's face changed slightly. This is one of my strongest attacks, I'm going to see if you can go next. Sengoku roared. King Kong palm. Fan's face changed slightly, looking at the golden light, the wind and clouds were changing, and the giant palm of Buddha's light covered the sky to give people a kind of unavoidable, incomparable momentum falling from the sky, pressing down, as if a sky collapsed, full of vastness, heavy, fast, no way to stop its downpour. The strength of this palm is so terrifying. Is this your real strength? Sengoku. Quote. Fan's face was gloomy and he looked at the serious Warring States. His eyes were full of a trace of violence. If this palm completely hit him, he would be instantly smashed and killed. You must know that although the ability to restore the fruit is perverted, it is not without shortcomings. For example, if his head or heart is hit violently, the recovery ability will immediately lose its effect, because those 2 places are the most deadly places in the human body, and he will die directly after being hit. It also takes time to recover the fruit ability and recover the damage of the whole body, and the bigger the injury, the longer it will be. Like Fan was attacked so much by the warring states, if it weren't for the strength of the body itself, it is estimated that he would have been beaten to death. As Fan said before, if he hadn't had the recovery fruit, it is estimated that he would have been killed by the warring states with 3 punches. This is not a joke. The attack of the warring states is quite domineering. The Buddha fruit plus overlord color domineering ordinary people are directly shocked to death by the violent air flow without hitting people, and his strength is even a little stronger than Carp. Oh my god, this is one of the strongest attacks of the warring states general. Even if you kill chickens, you use a knife, and you are worthy of being a general of the warring states period. Quote. It's dead. This kid is definitely dead. This trick is useless, people can dodge. No matter how strong the enemy is, it will be smashed to pieces. Quote. The surrounding naval elites were blinded by this extremely bright golden light, and shouted in surprise. The warring states generals finally began to exert their strength, and the end of these prisoners was coming, and for a while, the morale drop brought by the 2 lieutenant generals began to rise rapidly, suppressing the crazy prisoners who were originally pressing them, and began to reaction. Haha, the Sengoku general has used all his strength, you fools will send me to hell. Quote. These fanatical navies had no idea that the battlefield of the advanced city was too small, and that this move might affect them. I admit that you are very strong, but you are still too young and arrogant. You have succeeded in provoking me off. I want you to show you what is the highest combat power of the world's navy, what is the admiral. When it comes to hell, you have to give me a good repentance. Quote. Warring states said in a cold voice, the horror of the King Kong Palm is not more deeply understood than himself. He once used this trick to directly hit the Golden Lion, thus capturing him, and it is Roger, Whitebeard. The 2 super strong people do not dare to underestimate him in the face of a move, and they have to use all their strength to defend. That is to say, the person in the world who can block the King Kong Palm now is only one hand. I don't know who there is, but it is certain that there is absolutely no Anfin. Maybe 10 years from now, but now. HMPH, go to hell, you don't have 10 years from now, you worst fool. Looking at Fan with an ugly face, warring states showed a sneer, as if he had seen the scene of Fan being annihilated under the palm of his terrifying King Kong. Suddenly, Fan's ugly face changed, the corners of his mouth hooked up a weird smile, and his eyes looked at the warring states opposite him with some mockery. Sengoku, do you think you can kill me in this way? You're really naive. Quote. Boom. As soon as the words were stacked, there was a sudden loud bang on the edge of the sea. And the waves that exploded all over the sky, and at this time, the King Kong Palm pressed down, and suddenly the bright sky dimmed slightly. And then the violent golden light was scattered, and a golden light explosion that exceeded the decibel limit heard sounded. And a quarter of the entire advancing city was destroyed under the impact of this silent explosion, and the cracked cement slab under the bottom could not withstand this strong sense of oppression, and it was actually outlined a deep ravine. The soil rolled on the ground, and the boulder was directly shattered, and the elite of the navy and the prisoners were also implicated in it and turned into powder. The entire island of Advanced City shook for a few minutes, and the surrounding sea shook as if it had experienced a storm. You were the ones who destroyed him. Sengoku silently said in his heart to the elite of the navy who were implicated by his tricks. He felt a little guilty in his heart, but everything was worth it. It was worth it. When the smoke and dust cleared, most of the dozen or so warships around it were destroyed, and the huge and majestic advanced city was already in shambles, a quarter of which was destroyed, and the remaining 3/4 of the walls were covered with spider patterns, as if they would be torn apart with a single force. The elite of the navy were stunned. They were lucky. They were directly shocked by a shock wave, and they were not injured much, but the people who were very close to Fan were not easy to say, and they directly became bloody corpses on the ground, because this battlefield was too small, and the scale of the King Kong Palm attack was too terrifying. Almost 1/3 of the elite of the navy died directly, plus the previous deaths, and now the casualties of the elite of the navy have been more than half. How? This trick has affected us. Sengoku General. Quote. We forgot. The horror of the Warring States General's tricks, I forgot to hide, and I couldn't complain about the Warring States General. Quote. The Warring States General is also to kill the son of evil. Everything is to blame that guy. If it weren't for him, there would be no terrorist riot in the city, we wouldn't have come here, and we wouldn't have died so many brothers. Quote. I have to say that the prestige of the Warring States Admiral has reached a pull in the Navy. and it is clear that it is the warring states to shine all this, but these naval elites still put their big hats on and fan, thinking that he is the culprit of everything, if perhaps. This imp is a child of sin, and he will definitely go to hell when he dies. The elite of the Navy said excitedly, very excited. Hey, what's going on? Why did these prisoners pass out and fall to the ground again? Suddenly one of the elite Navy exclaimed. What? Fainted. Great. These fools have killed our brothers, and we will kill them first to get revenge. The elite of the Navy shouted. Kill them, now. Regardless of the elite of the Navy, at this time, Sengoku stood on a huge stone, looking at the position where Fan was standing just now with a gloomy and dark face. There was a lot of blood flowing from that place, full of fishy smell, and at the same time lay a huge crimson skeleton, which was the skeleton of a sea king. Warring States was silent for a long time, looked at the sea, and said slowly, I forgot, the soul fruit can not only control people, but also control the sea king. You control the sea king to block this attack, and then control a sea king to take you away, let you run, and it will be a failure. Ah! Boom! Sengoku roared with a hideous expression, and suddenly a huge column of water exploded in the newly calm sea. Under the seabed, in the mouth of a sea king, Fan was covered in blood, panting and kneeling, a little dying. His eyes looked at the dark space with cold eyes and said, the Warring States King Kong Palm is really powerful, let me spend a huge amount of money to control the sea kings to help me block, but I didn't expect it to still seriously hurt me. Quote. Haha, Sengoku, your strongest attack didn't kill me, I really want to see your angry expression. Fan suddenly laughed, and as soon as he finished speaking, he coughed violently. The recovery from the injuries on my body is a little slow. This overlord color domineering has actually hurt the origin of my recovery ability. It seems that if you want to fully recover, you will have to wait for several years. Quote. Fan coughed out a mouthful of scarlet blood. The cost of controlling the sea kings is too great. The mental consumption has reached almost 0 o'clock. Except for Magneto, everyone else is out of my control, but except for the people led by Magneto who can escape on the boat, the others fainted after breaking out of my control, they should all be killed. Quote. What's going on? Why did the will of the Sea King suddenly rage? I can't control my mental power, no. The mental power is about to collapse. Fan's face suddenly turned pale, coughed blood violently, and his eyes were heavy and he fainted. The calm red eyes of the controlled Sea King suddenly became violent, and they wagged their tails frantically as if they had taken medicine, and at the same time, the surrounding Sea Kings also went crazy, surging towards one place after another. They seemed to be attracted to something. Holy Land Mary Joa, World Government Headquarters. Did he run away? The 5 old stars listened to the snail's call report with a gloomy face. Yes, I was negligent, Elder 5 stars. Quote, this kid really has ambitions. He has eaten the fruit of copying. This kind of person can't let him continue. He must be stifled as soon as possible, otherwise he will be a big trouble in the future. No. The 5 old stars said coldly. How is the city now? How many prisoners have escaped? The city of Advance has now been basically destroyed on the surface and needs to be rebuilt. 95% of the prisoners who rioted have been executed, and 5% have escaped, but with the gate of justice, I believe that they will not be able to escape. But our casualties this time are too heavy. The prison soldiers and the Navy have suffered more than 10,000 casualties, 2 lieutenant generals, 7 major generals were killed in battle, and the director of prisons, Magellan, and the deputy director, Hannibal, were also killed in battle. Quote. This little brute. The 5 old stars showed a hint of murderous intent on their faces, and said hatefully, wanted, that little brute. The bounty is 1 billion Bailey. You have to kill him for me at all costs. I don't want to have a super strong man who is famous in the world in the future, do you understand? Yes. Quote. After hanging up the snail, the 5 old stars were full of anger, and the killing intent on their bodies filled the entire room, extremely cold, and the black-clothed soldiers in the 2 rows of the corridor outside were all trembling with this amazing murderous aura. He is truly the highest decision-maker of the world's government. The black-clothed soldiers secretly exclaimed. Draco aristocratic region. How dare this little brute make a big fuss about advancing the city, release all the prisoners, and lead a rebellion? Yes, Your Excellency the Patriarch. Quote, why did he lead this rebellion? Logically speaking, as long as this little brute didn't make mistakes, he would definitely be the henchman of the 5 elder star elders in the future. How could he be so stupid? Your Excellency Patriarch, according to the news from the Navy, this infan ate the copy fruit, copied the mental ability of the Levay 6 mind demon thief, and touched the reverse scales of the 5 old stars. Quote. Replicating the fruit. The anti-heaven ability that can replicate anyone's devil fruit. Yes. Quote. What? This little beast is so lucky, no wonder he has suddenly become so powerful lately. It turns out that he has eaten the copy fruit. Quote. This little beast's luck is really good, but it's also over, at all costs, to kill this little beast. He is a shame to all our celestial dragon families. This swelling bloodline can't be left behind. Quote. Yes. Quote. When all the Tianlong families were shocked by the gossip from the Navy headquarters, they were all shaken, and they were shocked by Infan's boldness, and they all showed different performances for Infan to eat the fruit of the anti-heaven copy. There was envy, strong jealousy, and jealousy. All of them were grapes that could not be eaten, so sour taste. In order to prevent Infan from continuing to grow further, they all issued an order to kill Infan at all costs. Naval Headquarters, Marin Vando. Office of the Marshal. More than a dozen Navy officers above the rank of Vice Admiral in the trench coat of Justice sat on both sides, looking at the Admiral, who was sitting on the main seat with a serious expression. Warring States, you come and talk about this Anfin, Sora said to Sengoku, who was sitting first on the left. Yes. Sengoku stood up. He pointed to a photo of Infan on the wooden board next to him. In the photo, Infan's expression was extremely cold. Scarlet blood was sprinkled on half of his face, and the whole person was like a devil. Infan, the abandoned son of the Tianlong family, is 10 years old this year. His physical skills are amazing. He knows the 6 styles of the Navy. Has superb swordsmanship, eats the copy devil fruit. The copy ability is the recovery fruit, the mental fruit and the soul fruit. The main crime, the Holy Land Dobby slaughtered all the participants, the city released the prisoners, and used the mental ability to control the riot, resulting in the almost complete destruction of the prison of the city, resulting in the death of tens of thousands of soldiers. The crime is extremely heinous. The 5 old stars ordered, the world is wanted, and the son of Sin and Fan has a bounty of 1 billion Bailey. Quote. Equals 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 equals. Beneath the depths of the ocean, a huge double-layered semicircular bubble-wrapped shield surrounds the island, and a loud cry can be heard from a certain part of the island, full of helplessness and horror. I saw a fish-shaped hair ornament, with wavy and flowing pink hair, bright blue eyes, beautiful appearance, and a more than 1 meter tall mermaid with a pink fish tail in shades and shades, crying loudly with crystal tears. Mother, where are you? Quote. She was separated from her mother. She was too naughty and excited to swim to an unknown place. Although the flowers and trees around this place were very beautiful, but it was too quiet, so that she was a little timid by nature. She stayed for a long time and did not see her mother coming, and finally she couldn't help crying. She cried for a long time, and her mother had not yet come. Boom, boom. Suddenly, there was a violent swimming sound, and the crying mermaid seemed to feel something, and suddenly froze, raised his head and looked at the dozens of terrifying and hideous beasts in front of him, and was instantly stupid. Wow, Queen Mother, what a lot of monsters, come and save Shirahoshi. In the next second, louder cries rang out, very frightened. Bang. Quote. At this moment, a terrifying and monstrous giant beast suddenly fell out of its bloody mouth, covered in blood, and just fell in front of this mermaid. Ha! The mermaid stopped crying and stared blankly at the strange-looking man in front of her, who was sleeping. Where is this? And Fan's eyelids suddenly moved slightly, and then he opened his eyes in a daze, and the first thing that caught his eye was the extremely luxurious light. Ha! In an instant, and Fan's eyes widened in confusion, and he was suddenly startled, and subconsciously slapped his right hand on the ground, and was about to jump up. It was the first thought he had when he woke up, the instinctive wariness of the presence of an unknown thing. The body jumped up in the air, and suddenly his arm weakened, followed by a deep sharp pain in his body, and he snorted and slammed back. Quote. A mouthful of scarlet blood spat out from the corner of Infan's mouth. his brows were tangled, and he still had injuries on his body, and his wounds were involved in a move just now. Just as he was vomiting blood, and Fan found himself bandaged all over his body, and he was in a soft chuang shop. Where is this? I was saved. And Fan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, frowned, and said with some doubts around him. Squeak. At this time, the door opposite by the big chuang was suddenly opened, and Fan, who felt extremely nervous, tensed all over his body, accidentally pulled the wound, and immediately spit out a mouthful of blood. Oh, what's wrong with you? A crisp and immature voice sounded with anxiety, and then a pair of small hands held Fan. Who are you? Fan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, looked up at the person who came suspiciously, and in an instant, his black pupils contracted rapidly. In his pupils, he is a mermaid wearing a fish-shaped hair accessory, a beautiful and fresh face, with wavy and long pink hair, and a pair of cute and bright blue eyes. Mermaid. Fan was slightly surprised. This is the legendary mermaid. That's right, we're merfolk. Suddenly, a majestic but peaceful female voice rang out. Fan looked up and saw a young woman with wavy golden medium and long hair, wearing a long robe with a fish scale pattern, and a noble temperament entering the room, followed by two mermaid soldiers. The two fish-man soldiers looked at Fan with unconcealable disgust and hatred in their eyes. Fan frowned. He actually came to the territory of the fishman. If he guessed correctly, this should be the Fishman Island. This is really a troublesome place. After the outbreak of the slave incident, every mermaid on it has a deep resentment towards human beings, and now he is seriously injured, and his strength is afraid that he is not even 30%, and this Fishman Island is quite dangerous. Behind Fan's calm eyes was a deep fear and vigilance. The young woman seemed to see something behind Fan's eyes, and she smiled slightly. Don't worry, we won't hurt you, son of sin. Quote. Fan was stunned when he heard this. Son of sin, what do you mean? Before he could react, the young woman took out a bounty order and pointed it at Fan. Fan, the son of the devil, is charged with leading the prisoners to riot and destroying the advanced city prison, which is a heinous crime, offering a reward of 1 billion baileys and providing clues of 100 million baileys. The young woman smiled. Fan's eyes narrowed. He had expected that the world government would be wanted, but he was a little puzzled that the world government did not expose his ability. According to the previous wanted, the detailed force strength and various information would be exposed, especially he grew up under the world government, many things the world government knows, but why? A billion bailey bounty. Fan figured it out, and wanted to borrow a knife to kill someone. A billion baileys bounty would make many people in the world tempted. Wanting to borrow those people to kill him was really clever. Clever. What's the matter? Are you going to arrest me and go to the world government to receive a reward? Fan said coldly to the young woman with slightly narrowed eyes. The more he looked at it, the more familiar this young woman became. Isn't this the Princess Otahime who has always wanted to change the history of the fish people and want the coexistence and republican between the fish people and humans? As soon as the words fell, the little mermaid beside Fan was shocked, although she didn't know what the world government was, but she knew what it meant to catch. Ah, the little mermaid pleaded with Princess Otahime. Listening to the little mermaid next to him say that he was pitiful, Fan's forehead was full of black lines, pitiful, sarcastic words, but in this way, Fan did not have a trace of anger in his heart. He only felt speechless, because he felt that the words of the little mermaid contained kindness, purity, pity and pleading, and there was no malice or ridicule at all. Shirahoshi, don't worry, my mother won't catch my brother. Princess Otahime smiled at the little mermaid. White Star. When Fan heard Princess Otahime call the little mermaid's name, he was suddenly like a lightning strike, and his heart was shocked. He had already thought that Princess Otahime only had such a daughter as Shirahoshi, but one was a little uncertain because of the little mermaid's laughter, and now think about it carefully. Now 15 years ago, Shirahoshi was only 1 year old. How big can it be? And 15 years later it will only be 17 meters old. In this way, you can figure out why he appeared on Fishman Island. This white star has the terrifying ability to control the sea kings by nature. What's the matter? Princess Otahime looked at Fan with some doubts. She had a domineering look, and obviously sensed that Fan's emotions had changed a little just now. It's nothing. It's a bit of a coincidence, like a friend of mine. Fan noticed that Princess Otahime was a little vigilant, and couldn't help but say casually. This time, and Fan stabilized her emotions well, there was no loophole, and Princess Otahime took it seriously. She nodded, that's really a coincidence. Quote, brother-in-law, is there someone with the same name as me? Shirahoshi blinked his big eyes, a little curious. And Fan nodded casually, this white star doesn't look like a curious baby. He hates curious babies the most, although they are very cute but very troublesome. Princess Otahime, I don't know if you have a boat, lend me one, and I will definitely repay you in the future. And Fan thought about it, and then said hesitantly, he still couldn't let go of that vigilance in his heart. He was still suspicious. There was no way this Princess Otahime wanted to coexist peacefully with humans, almost crazy. If she used her own bargaining chips to exchange for the world government, it would be really too dangerous, and even if it wasn't, once he was exposed, the world government would definitely come to encircle and suppress Fishman Island, and when the time came, no one would be able to keep the old hatred and new hatred. It's good for him and good for them to leave. To be honest, as a normal human being, he also hates fishmen, and like most ordinary people, he hates the disgusting fishy smell on their bodies, yes, the fishy smell. Although Fan didn't ask about the stinking fishy smell on Princess Otahime and Bai Xing, the fishy smell on the two fishman soldiers behind him made him unbearable, and he felt a little like vomiting. Perhaps this is why mermaids are favored by some people in the world, while male mermaids are so despicable and want to be killed. Leave, you want to leave? Princess Otahime said in surprise, you have been in a coma for half a year, and your injuries have not healed, you want to leave, are you sure you can leave? What, I've been in a coma for half a year? And Fan was taken aback, his eyes glaring at the boss in disbelief. After the mental power was consumed, it was so serious that he was in a coma for half a year. Brother, are you leaving? You're leaving, people saved you, and you didn't even play with me. You're such a bad person. Bad guy. At this moment, Bai Xing suddenly opened his mouth, and a trace of tears began to appear in his bright eyes, and the crystal tears showed his dissatisfaction with him. Quote. And Fan looked at Bai Xing's tears, and his expression suddenly leaked. Nima, if Shirahoshi cries, he will summon the Sea Kings. And he also summons a group of Sea Kings, a group of terrifying Sea Kings, and it makes me numb when I think about it. Even if the warring states face the attack of a group of Sea Kings, it is estimated that they will only have to escape. And Fan finally decided to stay, firstly because of his own injuries, and secondly because of Bai Xing. There was no way he couldn't afford to hurt a group of Sea Kings. Looking at Bai Xing, who was looking at him curiously in front of him, and Fan sighed. He was really annoyed by Bai Xing's ignorance these days, and actually asked him why he didn't have a fish tail, why was he eaten in a Sea King's mouth. And Fan really wanted to say that everything was because of you, but he didn't say it, because this white star is really a curious baby, and it will be endless. Shirahoshi, I'm going to go out and get some air. And Fan said. He stayed in the room for 20 hours a day, and he finally couldn't bear it for several days in a row, and it was really suffocating here. Hearing this, Bai Xing was stunned. She shook her head and said, the Queen Mother didn't agree. She said that you had better go out less, otherwise it will cause some trouble. Quote. Of course, and Fan knows what kind of trouble he will have when a human goes out, but is he the kind of person who is timid? Although his strength is extremely weak now, he doesn't pay attention to some garbage on Fishman Island, because if he is stronger, he is estimated to go to the Sun Pirates now, and make trouble on the sea. However, he went out for a purpose, and he felt that it was not a matter to stay on the Chuang like this and do nothing and wait for the automatic healing, so he thought about how to heal quickly, because he didn't want to put his safety in the hands of others, which was really unsafe. After a few days of thinking, he finally remembered the devouring ability of the infinite fruit, and he had forgotten that devouring people could not only comprehend the abilities and memories of the other party, but also devour the flesh, body, chi and blood energy that they had exercised. If he devours something powerful, the more he thinks about it, the more likely it is. It's just that the two biggest problems in front of us now are, what is the powerful thing? The Sea Kings. Although there is nothing more suitable than something to devour the Sea Kings, but in the current state of serious injuries, they are very reluctant to deal with the last one, and they don't know where to find the Sea Kings. Although Bai Xing can attract Sea Kings, and Fan doesn't want to think about it, he wants a Sea King, not a group. he only needs 100 meters in size, he doesn't need a few kilometers of Sea Kings, a bunch of thousands of meters of Sea Kings is really terrible. Little sister, if you go out with me, I'll buy you a bang bang to eat. And Fan looked at Bai Xing strangely and said, looking like a bad uncle who abducted little Lori again. No, the Queen Mother commanded that you can't go out. Quote. Shirahoshi shook his head and said, resolutely rejecting any temptation. MB. And Fan was furious in his heart, and wanted to slap the table angrily. This Bai Xing was so hateful. Since he became strong, it was the first time he had to grind his mouth, but no matter how he grinded, he couldn't shake Bai Xing's determination to take care of him, and resolutely carried out his mother's orders. And Fan couldn't help it. If it weren't for the fact that there was a group of terrifying helpers, he would want to slap the past. Labor and management are now a little difficult to protect. I still care if you look cute, not to mention what's the use of being cute. After the age of 30, the fishtail will be separated into a pair of legs, and the future body size is still so huge, it is destined to be a female single. And Fan suppressed the irritability in his heart. He showed a kind expression on his face, and forced a smile. Brother will take you to eat. Eat. And Fan suddenly couldn't think of what to eat. He had already said everything. There is. And Fan's mind suddenly lit up, and when he thought of something to eat, his heart suddenly lit up. The corners of his mouth curled into a wicked smile. Brother will take you to eat meatballs. Quote. Meatballs, what are they? Bai Xing was stunned when she heard this, looking at Fan with some incomprehension. She had never eaten anything other than fish since she was a child, so she refused Fan's thing, but it was the first time she heard of meatballs. A very tasty thing. Fan smiled, full of ill intentions. Cut, I don't believe it, I don't even know how many good things I've eaten. Shirahoshi pursed her lips, full of disdain, but the longing in her bright eyes betrayed her. Fan swept away the two fishman soldiers waiting at the door, and a trace of coldness flashed in his eyes. You close your eyes, and I'll let you taste the meatballs. Fan smiled. Don't lie to me. Quote. I won't lie to you, close your eyes. Quote. When Bai Xing closed his beautiful eyes for a moment, Fan's expression changed instantly, full of endless coldness. Say bad things about me all day long. When I don't hear them, look at me with colored eyes. The giants are kneeling at the feet of humans, and a group of lowly fishmen still want to live peacefully with humans. What a naive animal. He said. Fan said coldly to the fishman soldiers waiting at the door. These fishmen often look at him with disgust on their faces these days, and often say some bad things and ridicule. Sometimes he is here alone. These two food that served him food was directly thrown on the ground, like a beggar in charity. How could he bear it? He hated the person who wantonly insulted him the most in his life. If it weren't for his serious injury, for the sake of Bai Xing saving him, he probably would have raised the butcher's knife to the fishman clan in disgust. HMPH, you two better die. Fan said coldly, and after speaking, a strange energy shot out from his body, directly on the two fishman soldiers, and he couldn't even scream, so he was refined into two meatballs by the terrifying energy. These two meatballs flew straight into Fan's hands, exuding a trace of crystalline meat-cutting energy. Okay, you can open your eyes. Fan smiled. Quote. Bai Xing nodded, and after opening her eyes, her beautiful big eyes widened instantly, and she stared blankly at the two meatballs in Fan's hands, and she smelled a deep fragrance. Eat. These are meatballs. Fan smiled weirdly, extremely evil. I'm going to eat. Bai Xing drooled greedily. Her taste had been deeply stimulated, and before Fan could react, her little hand quickly picked up one and swallowed it. Delicious. Quote. Shirahoshi's eyes bulged out, and his little face smiled unusually happily. Then eat more. Cough. Fan laughed. He coughed, and swallowed the chi and blood that had risen to his throat again. I'm going to eat it again. Bai Xing swallowed the meatballs, and then pestered Fan and said that it was the first time she had eaten such a delicious thing. Hee, there are many more. Fan said with a smile. These two meatballs were the meatballs he refined by devouring the two fishman soldiers with the infinite fruit, refining the most essence of part of the energy. Fan devoured it in this way, but considering some reasons, he eliminated the part that could obtain the memory, leaving all the most essence of energy. Of course, the meatballs are not composed of the so-called meat, but a mass of energy, which is forcibly distorted by the power of the infinite fruit, erasing the flesh and body of the race, leaving only the void energy, so Bai Xing is not eating his own kind, otherwise with the characteristics of the Sea Emperor, eating his own kind is estimated to be directly rampant. In fact, Anfan used to devour, not to devour people, but to energy, just like people died, is it still a person? Anfan is not a good person, but he is not a bad person either, because he has killed countless people, but the people he killed are not ordinary people, so he is not a good person and he is not a bad person. Where can I find the Aquaman? Anfan walked on the Fishman Street, touching his chin and quietly looking around, because he was really unfamiliar with Fishman Island, and followed Bai Xing next to him. At this time Bai Xing was also very curious to look around, and everything was full of curiosity about her. I walked into a lively street with a lot of fish people. Oh my god, is this human? Why are humans swaggering down our Fishman Street? Still a little kid, how did he get to Fishman Island? When a human walked in a place of a different race, it was easy to attract onlookers, and the fishmen on the Fishman Street all stopped, and looked at Anfan in disbelief, their eyes revealing disgust and a trace of fear. Isn't this Princess Shirahoshi? How did she get around this human brat? It can't be that this kid kidnapped Princess Shirahoshi, right? What are you kidding? How could this human kid kidnap Princess Shirahoshi in the palace? Quote, how is it impossible? Human strength is so strong. But in that case, why is this human stupid walking down the Fishman Street? Quote, human beings are cunning by nature. It is estimated that they are pretending to confuse us. No matter what, this human dares to kidnap our Princess Shirahoshi, and he must not be let go. Quote, maybe this human boy is a friend of the king. What bullshit. Humans treat us fish people like that, why do we still need to be friends with him? The fishmen looked at Anfan with strange eyes, and whispered earnestly, although some radical fishmen looked at Anfan with more and more wrong eyes, but they were full of fear for Anfan. Anfan, who was looking around, seemed to notice something, his brows suddenly furrowed, he stopped, his eyes were cold and he glanced at the surrounding fish people. Bai Xing also felt something wrong at this time, and hid behind Anfan. It turned out that I didn't know when, these fish people began to spontaneously and consciously surround a circle, blocking Anfan's way. Get out of my way, please. Anfan said very politely. Boy, you kidnapped our Princess Shirahoshi. A strong fish man stepped forward, clenched his fists, and shouted coldly. Do you think I'm kidnapping Princess Shirahoshi like this? Anfan shouted coldly, these fishmen are inexplicable, if he kidnapped Princess Baixing, he would have already alarmed Fishman Island, and this group of idiot fishmen didn't want to take a look. If it had been placed in the past, Anfan would have slashed it with a knife and dared to say so loudly to me. Who knows? The fishman shouted excitedly. The fishman's voice may have been too loud, and he brought down the timid Bai Xing at once, and his two small hands grabbed Anfan's clothes tightly and hid behind. Anfan frowned, he suddenly felt that this fishman was a little familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere, so he asked, what's your name? Human imp, my name is Hottie Jones, you'd better release Princess Shirahoshi to me right away, or you'll be better later. The fishman said fiercely. Hottie Jones. Anfan was slightly stunned, his face immediately became gloomy, he remembered who this fishman was, no wonder this fishman would be so excited when he saw him, wasn't this the man who grew up in the hatred and anger of the Fishman clan? I'll give you a chance, you get out of the way for me right away, or don't blame my sword. Anfan said gloomily, he didn't have a good impression of this fishman who hated and lost his heart to humans, he was quite disgusted, this hatred of human beings was like a mustard, even his own compatriots were not spared, as long as he was close to the Fishman clan with humans, he would not hesitate to get rid of them, and kill them. For such a fishman, the favorability was not only -100 or -100. MD, it's disgusting to step on a smelly, hard shit when you go out. What are you? What qualifications do you have to get us out of the way? You know, this is Fishman Island. Not the red earth continent above you. Quote. Hottie shouted angrily. He was naturally extremely disgusted with these humans in his bones, and he wanted to kill them all. But he knew that this was a very unobvious problem, he had no choice but to look at their backs with hatred for some powerful humans passing by, but a human boy, did he have to be afraid? But this Hottie is also very smart, if this human kid has anything to do with Shirahoshi, he will definitely suffer as a bird, just in case, he should pull more fishmen, when there is really something, he will not be punished severely. If there is no Princess Otahime, this fish trader, does he need to take care of so much? They treat us as nothing, and peaceful coexistence with human beings is complete bullshit, and only strong strength is the hard way. Hodi's words immediately aroused the hatred of the fish people around him. These fish people have a deep jealousy that humans can live in the vast and fat red soil continent, and have a deep inferiority complex for the fish man island that they can only sink in the deep sea forever, and these words are like a needle to poke their most sensitive parts. Human, don't defile our noble Princess Shirahoshi with your lowly hands, dare to let go quickly. Quote, human imp, you'd better let Princess Shirahoshi go, otherwise no one will be able to save you. Quote, these fish men stared at Anfan with red eyes and shouted loudly. You bullied us on the ground and we can't beat you, so just put up with it. But where is this place? Fish Man Island, their base camp, their home. They have to be bullied at home. Can this be endured? Brother. Bai Xing grabbed Anfan's shoulders with both hands. She was extremely scared of these fish men with red eyes. Her simple mind didn't know that these fish people were for her. Seeing these fishmen approaching him more and more, Anfan's face turned black like carbon. He forced the anger in his heart, gritted his teeth and said coldly, I will say 2 words in the end. One is that I did not kidnap your Princess Baixing, and second, you better not take a step forward, you will make me really angry. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing here? Just as the two sides were tense, a loud shout sounded, and a patrol of fishmen in armor arrived. It's just in time. Here are humans kidnapping Princess Shirahoshi, hurry up and catch him. Quote. Hodi was overjoyed to see this and preemptively wrote. What? Kidnapping Princess Shirahoshi? The fish man patrol was shocked and said angrily, it's that lawless human who kidnapped Princess Shirahoshi, you must catch him. Quote. It's this human boy. A fish man yelled at Anfan with his fish finger. Are you sure? The captain of the fish man soldier frowned when he saw that it was a child. This human is just a child, how can he have the ability to kidnap Princess Shirahoshi? The tone of the captain of the fish man soldiers was full of displeasure. Princess Shirahoshi lived in the palace and was guarded by a large number of soldiers. How could a human child enter and kidnap Princess Shirahoshi? Isn't this a mockery of their incompetence in disguise? Despite this, the captain of the fish man soldiers stepped forward and shouted, Who are you? Why is Princess Shirahoshi here? Anfan indifferently glanced at the captain of the fish man soldier who asked loudly condescendingly, and he said coldly, I am a friend of Princess Otahime, and I brought Shirahoshi out to play. Quote, Princess Otahime. All the fishmen looked stunned, and then they all looked at Anfan with some complications. Among the fishmen, only Princess Otahime had illusions about humans, but she didn't expect it to be so serious that she even entrusted her daughter to humans. Isn't she afraid that this human kid will abduct Princess Shirahoshi for traffic? I have to say that since the emancipation of slaves, the attitude of the fish people towards humans has suddenly become extreme, and in their minds, humans are almost all hateful words, and they can't be trusted. Are you a friend of Princess Otahime? The captain of the fish man soldier looked at Anfan with a complicated look, and he said, but just in case, we need you to go with us to confirm your identity so that we can clear up this misunderstanding. Quote. Anfan took a deep breath to calm his breath, and he said coldly, okay. Quote. That's good. The captain of the fish man soldier smiled. No matter what, it would be good if the human was willing to cooperate. Captain, you should put away the knife at his waist, and lock him up. In case he does something to hurt Princess Otahime, you will be in trouble. At this time, Hodi suddenly shouted. The captain of the fish man soldier was stunned for a moment, and Fan's face changed wildly, and he felt angry in his heart in an instant. Confiscating his weapons and chaining him is a naked insult to him. Okay, the tiger doesn't wield, you treat me as a sick cat. I've put up with you for a long time, you're dying. Shout, and Fan's figure flashed, and directly turned into an afterimage in front of Hodi, and without saying anything, he slapped Hodi's shark face fiercely, directly pumping him away and slamming him to the ground. With such a heavy palm, you can see how angry Anfangson is. He hurt Princess Otahime, and I don't know who will kill her in the future, and he is still qualified to beat her. You lowly human being, you dare to beat me. Hodi roared angrily. His shark face was directly red and swollen, a trace of blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth, and a large shark tooth was immediately slapped off by this slap. Shame on him being slapped on the ground by a human child. What a shame that he was beaten by humans. He wants to tear this human kid to pieces, and the anger in his heart seems to be able to burn all the Fishman Island. If his vision can kill, the horror of Anfin would have been cut apart by him with 1,000 knives. Labor and management are beating you. Quote. Before Hody could finish his words, he was trampled on his face by the violent Anfin and stomped on the ground. I'm going to kill you, lowly human. Hody's eyes were bloodshot with anger, and before he could say a second word, Anfin stepped on his back with his other foot, and the intense pain made his eyeballs explode, and the shark's face was hideous. He swore that as long as he was in the future, he would torture this human boy to death in the most crazy way. And Fan clearly saw the madness and unwillingness in Huodi's eyes, and he was afraid that as soon as he caught the opportunity, he would brutally torture and kill himself. It's a pity that this Hody doesn't have a chance. Although this Hody will be the big boss of Fishman Island in the next 15 years, and his strength is very strong, but he doesn't know how far he has grown in 15 years, the gap is so big now, and the gap will be even more terrifying in the future. You trash, you can't beat me in 100 years if I give you 100 years. And Fan grabbed his hair and roared fiercely, what is the big boss of Fishman Island, MD, it is just a small fish and shrimp, garbage that can be killed with one finger. It took less than 3 seconds to happen, and all the fishmen were stopped by Fan, who suddenly erupted. What are you doing? Stop it. At this time, the captain of the fishman soldier took his weapon and yelled at Fan, no matter what, Hodie is a fishman, and Fan is a human after all, he can't ignore the oppression of the fishman by humans, and you must know that this is the Fishman Island. All the fishman soldiers raised their weapons and aimed them at Fan, shouting with righteous indignation. Although you are a friend of Princess Otahime, this is Fishman Island, not the Red Earth continent, you have to know your identity. Quote. Hurry up and let him go, you dare to bully us fishmen, are you looking for death, you know? The surrounding fish people were also very excited, and Fan's hands had touched their sensitive parts, touched their sore spots, and it was okay to be bullied by bullies outside, but now the bullies are bullying people at home, what is this? Do you want to die? And Fan's face was full of violence, his pupils continued to shrink, a strong murderous aura swept up in the air, and an invisible pressure enveloped this group of fishmen. They seemed to see a demon crawling out of the sea of blood in the corpse mountain, laughing hideously, and they seemed to see countless unjust ghosts rushing towards them, desperately biting madly on them. A group of garbage fish people, no wonder they are treated as pigs and dogs by humans. Suddenly, a sound of surprise flashed, and everything vanished in an instant. Shirahoshi, don't cry, I'll take you to eat meatballs, take you to eat meatballs. And Fan touched Bai Xing's head with a gentle face and said with a smile. Brother, don't be angry. Quote, don't worry, no, I'll take you to eat meatballs, don't cry, don't cry. Quote. When Fan's back disappeared with the white star far away. The cold and stiff whole body of the fish people was relieved, they only felt that their whole body was trembling, their hearts were beating at a high speed of nearly 100 yards, sweating profusely, and just now a feeling that seemed to be more terrifying than despair emerged from the bottom of their hearts, and they were almost paralyzed with fright. All the fishmen looked at the direction of Fan's departure in fear, it was really terrifying, too terrifying. Hurry up and report to the king, there is such a terrifying man on Fishman Island. Princess Shirahoshi is next to that terrible man, I don't know what will happen, hurry up and tell the king. Quote. You abominable human being, I will definitely pay you back 10 times the shame of today. Huodi lay on the ground, clenched his fists and stared at the direction Fan left, just now he was not shocked, but even more hatred in his heart, and at this moment, he even fell in love with Princess Otahime and the royal family of Fishman Island. He probably didn't know that if it weren't for Shirahoshi's fear of crying, his shark head would have burst out. Fishman Island. Located on the top floor of Fishman Island, which can see the sun, it is a large luxurious palace made of large coral reefs, shells, and other building materials, and a giant dragon is entrenched. What are you talking about? A terrifying human kid kidnapping Princess Shirahoshi? The giant merfolk exclaimed. Yes, Lord King. Hurry up and save Princess Shirahoshi, otherwise something may happen. The Fishman soldier said below. This giant mermaid is none other than the king of Fishman Island, the coelacanth mermaid, Neptune, the Knight of the Seas. I see, you can step down. Nip frowned and waved his hand back, he had already thought of who that human child was, but why didn't he move at all when he took Shirahoshi? In fact, he knows everything about what Princess Otahime does, but he has always turned a blind eye, neither supporting nor opposing it, such as saving the son of Sin back, although he was shocked, but he also had the same attitude as before, but with more precautions. After all, now the bounty of the son of Sin in the world is second only to Whitebeard. And he also led the prisoners to riot and destroy the prison of the city. The strength must be very terrifying and powerful. He didn't think about handing over the son of Sin and Fan, but thinking about their fishmen being enslaved by the nobles of the world, there was a raging anger in his heart. Although this anger was full of helplessness, now that he can retaliate against the world government, he will naturally not let it go. However, this revenge cannot be passed on. The risk is extremely high. Once it is exposed, the encirclement and suppression of the world government that will be faced, even if Whitebeard protects them now, it will not work. After all, they are not Whitebeard's people after all, the two are just a simple relationship of mercy. And in fact, he is not without illusions in his heart. He saved a person with great strength and great potential. If something happens to Fishman Island in the future, there is such a life-saving relationship, the son of Sin will definitely help. After all, the world is big, and the people are the greatest. But Neptune didn't expect something to happen. Of course he didn't believe that the son of Sin would kidnap his 1.5-year-old daughter. Princess Shirahoshi didn't say anything special, just said that Princess Shirahoshi had a life-saving grace for the son of Sin, so she shouldn't hurt her, unless this son of Sin was a wolf-hearted thing, but this is impossible. From liberating the city, leading the riot, and destroying the city, you can see how the festival of the sons of Sin is. Of course, Neptune would not have thought so if he knew that the prisoners of Anvin Liberation Advanced City were mainly for them to be cannon fodder, but because the newspaper wrote about the terrible death toll of more than 200,000 due to the children of Sin, it is a pity that the credibility of the world government is too low, so that everyone thinks that it doesn't matter about the children of Sin, it really wants to be fake, and the fake is believed to be true. But just in case, Neptune thought about it, let's go look for it. He only has such a daughter. He doesn't know the facts, he has a pimple in his heart. Come, follow me to find Princess Shirahoshi. Neptune took a finely carved trident and quickly swung his tail out, followed by a large number of fishman soldiers, whose scale attracted the attention of many fishmen, and some inside information spread by word of mouth, and soon became. There is a human kid who kidnapped Princess Shirahoshi, and it seems that there are bad intentions. Quote, a human has kidnapped Princess Shirahoshi and seems to be going to be sold into slavery. There are humans who kidnap Princess Shirahoshi and sell her as slaves. Quote, in an instant, the entire Fishman Island was boiling, and the aura of anger was quietly ignited on the island. Equals 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 equals. At this time, and Fan was in the middle of the sea, covered in colorful bubble film, and now he was boldly shuttling through the deep sea to find the Sea Kings, and he didn't know if it was stupid or brave. By Fan's side, the little mermaid Shirahoshi also followed, full of fear and excitement about the darkness around him, fear of the unknown, and excitement about the sea. Brother, slow down. Bai Xing's small hand grabbed Fan and said softly. Fan was speechless when he heard it. He is now a novice in the deep sea. The speed is as slow as hell, and the caution is even slower, basically not moving, all moving by the movement of the seawater. This actually says that he is fast. If it is a mermaid, the speed is at least dozens of times faster than him. Now that Bai Xing says this, can he be regarded as a mockery? Bai Xing is scared. Why don't you send your brother back to Fishman Island, and wait for your brother to make fish balls for you to eat? Fan whispered to Bai Xing. Don't. Bai Xing replied immaturely. I don't know why she felt so comfortable in this deep sea. A comfort that melted into her blood made her deeply intoxicated. Hey, Fan sighed. He knew this answer. In fact, he didn't want to take Bai Xing with him, because Bai Xing was likely to become a burden in the battle and drag him down. But when he left a few steps, Bai Xing had tears in his eyes, which made Fan very excited. He didn't want to just get out of Fishman Island, and a group of sea kings of several kilometers suddenly appeared in front of him and ate him in one bite, which was too cruel. There was no way, and Fan had no choice but to take the white star with him. Strange, why haven't you seen anything until now? And Fan looked around at the pitch-black deep sea. He hadn't seen even a small fish since just now, and he didn't know what was going on. Nima. No, Fishman Island is getting smaller and smaller, and if you go forward, Fishman Island will be gone, and it will be very troublesome at that time. And Fan looked back at the small point of light, and frowned in his heart. Let's go back. And Fan said to Shirahoshi. We've gone back, so fast. We haven't found the meatballs yet. Princess Shirahoshi said reluctantly. She now felt that this sea was a sea chuang, lying on it was extremely comfortable, and she didn't want to get up. Let's go back. And Fan looked away. Okay. Seeing in Fan's insistence, Bai Xing nodded obediently. Oops. Quote. At the moment when Bai Xing turned around, his little hand suddenly hurt, as if he had touched something, and he immediately screamed in pain. What's wrong? And Fan was shocked, thinking that something had happened to Shirahoshi. My hand is bleeding, it looks like something has cut it. Bai Xing raised his bloody little hand to Fan with tears in his eyes. What? Shirahoshi, don't cry. Seeing that Bai Xing was about to cry, and Fan was shocked, this pampered girl. He hurriedly grabbed Bai Xing's little finger directly and stopped the bleeding finger. At this time, Shirahoshi is only 1.5 years old. It's all right, Shirahoshi. And Fan looked at Bai Xing's delicate wound that was no longer bleeding, comforted, and at the same time swept what was cut on Bai Xing's finger, and a sickle-shaped seaweed appeared in his eyes. Bai Xing nodded with a deflated face. Let's go. Quote. And Fan said, just when he wanted to pull Bai Xing back to Fishman Island, he was suddenly stunned, and stupidly looked at the lion-like face in front of him, with horns like horns on his head, and hair that only lions have, but the lower body is the shape of a sea lion, with fish scales attached to the surface, and shark fin on his back. I saw that this sea king opened his fangs at this time and swallowed a drop of reddish blood, which was the blood that Bai Xing had just shed. And Fan was overjoyed. It was actually a sea king, but he didn't expect a drop of Bai Xing's blood to attract a sea king. It was really reasonable, unexpected. And it wasn't a super large sea king, which was really great. Roar. The scarlet eyes of the sea kings stared at Fan, as if they hadn't seen the white star princess behind Fan. I've heard that the sea kings have the same intelligence as humans, but I want to see if we humans are smarter, you monsters who cross the sea. And Fan's second-generation ghost Che slowly pulled out and stared at the sea king with a sneer. His second-generation ghost has always been by his side, because ordinary people can't take it at all, and if they take it, they will be made into idiots by the violent killing intent, and so many people have died under the second-generation ghost knife, and the murderous aura on it has become a little stronger. Roar. The Sea King class felt the aura of danger from the second generation of ghosts, and the scarlet eyes flashed a trace of humanized jealousy, but it did not retreat. It was the most noble Sea King class in the world. How could a knife scare it away? Shirahoshi, you go back to Fishman Island first. And Fan whispered to Bai Xing. He had already seen that this Sea King would not hurt Bai Xing, but it was difficult to say in the battle. If Bai Xing was still around, it was estimated that 9 times out of 10 he would be injured by mistake. Ah! Bai Xing hid behind Fan, looking at the hideous Sea King in front of her with fear in her eyes. Hearing Fan's words, she looked directly away. Her simple mind, she would never abandon Fan alone. The Queen Mother once said that she must not give up a friend and companion when she is in danger. Let's go. Fan's face was very displeased, and he directly grabbed Bai Xing and threw it with all his strength in the direction of Fishman Island. What a crooked reason. Suddenly, the white star was like a rocket shooting straight towards the Sea Kings, quickly passing by the Sea Kings. If it was someone else, it is estimated that the Sea Kings swallowed it in one gulp, but the white star, this Sea Kings turned a blind eye, as if it was air just passing by. The one who gets in the way is gone, and the two of us can get started. Fan's tongue shook the blood on the corner of Tian's mouth, and his eyes looked at the Sea Kings with a bloodthirsty light, as if he were looking at his prey. Roar. Fan's eyes directly angered the Sea Kings. It is really unbearable for a weak human to provoke it first, and now to look at it with the eyes of a prey. Quote. The Sea King let out a long roar, wagged his tail and rushed towards Fan at great speed, opening his bloody mouth. Fan's body was steady, not washed away by the churning water. Fan's eyes narrowed slightly. his horizontal sword was erected, and the fierce and terrifying sword chi gathered up, his feet stomped on the sea, and his body suddenly rioted, rushing out like a sharp arrow. Slash. Quote. Dawns, I saw a flash of scarlet light, the surrounding sea water rolled, and a vacuum zone was cut out, and a knife directly cut off the water layer. This knife was so terrifying. Bang. This terrifying knife slashed at the body of the Sea King, and it actually made a sound of gold and iron clashing, but it did not break its scale armor. What? A scarlet blood overflowed from the corner of Anfan's mouth, and he was quite surprised to look at the scale armor that left only a white mark under his feet. This was a knife with all his strength. How could this Sea King be so powerful? Remember that the Sea King who went to Advanced City to kill was about the same size, and he was killed casually, but why? Anfan was puzzled. Roar. At this moment, the Sea King roared angrily, its huge body moved, and its tail flicked, shaking the turbulent seawater, and directly hit Anfan. This human dared to attack it and seek death. What? Feeling the furious sea water brought by the tail of the Sea King, oppressing him and impacting his body, Anfan's expression froze, he waved his feet violently, and shouted in a low voice, land foot. Quote. I saw that the traces of the dancing feet formed a half-moon shaped aura more than 1 meter wide, and the bright light flashed, and the murderous slash slashed towards the tail of the attack. At the same time, Anfan's footsteps staggered, as if he had caught air in the seawater, and with a burst, his body flashed quickly using the moon step, and he felt extremely flexible in the seawater. Roar. Anfan's angry roar suddenly sounded in Anfan's ears, and he didn't know when. The Sea Kings were close at hand, raising their huge heads, opening their mouths of blood, and biting towards Anfan. Facing the Sea King's bloody mouth, like devouring the heavens and the earth, Anfan frowned, and the bloody smell made him almost gag. Anfan endured the nausea. His eyes flashed with a hint of sharpness, and the second-generation ghost knife in his hand flashed, and a sharp knife appeared immediately, piercing through the space and waving directly towards the mouth of the Sea King. Bang! There was another sound of gold and iron colliding, and it turned out that just as the sword was about to enter the mouth of the Sea King, the open blood basin mouth suddenly merged, and Anfan's sword slashed into its sharp teeth. What? Quote. Seeing that there was only one white mark left on the sharp teeth of the Sea King, Anfan was very shocked. This was a blow with all his strength. Why did it leave another white mark? When did the Sea King become so perverted? The Sea King's tall pupils were full of ferocity Liu's rage, and it was attacked by this human again and again to its body, and it was now very angry, and he wanted to tear this person to pieces. Anfan stared at this Sea King who was covered in scale armor and was extremely hideous, and he suddenly found that he had entered a misunderstanding. Fishman Island is located several thousand meters in the deep sea. In such deep waters, how can the Sea Kings only be a few hundred meters in size? You must know that with all his strength, he can cut out a knife in 2 layers of sea water in the deep sea of several thousand meters, even if a super large Sea King of several kilometers will bleed, but this 500-meter-old Sea King class actually left only a white mark. How is this possible? In the words of Anfan's previous life, this is not scientific, it has violated the laws of science. It can be temporarily defined as a supernatural event. Of course, Anfan would not define this unscientific event as a supernatural event. He thought of a possibility. In fact, this Sea King is very likely to be a super large Sea King of several kilometers. As for why the body size is not so big, Anfan thought of a possibility. This guy strengthens the energy of growing his body into his own defenses, and if that's the case, then it makes sense. You must know how terrifying it is to be able to grow from a few hundred meters in size to a few thousand meters in size, and the energy required for a tenfold difference is so terrifying. Now that it is all added to the defense, it is unreasonable to not change the state. If that's the case, it's going to be very tricky. Anfan coughed, looking at this Sea King. His eyes were full of jealousy, and a retreat sprouted in his heart. He couldn't even break through other people's defenses. How to convert him into energy after killing? But Anfan was full of unwillingness. If he could devour this Sea King, maybe all his injuries would be healed, and it would be possible to heal. And even if you give up, won't all the Sea Kings you encounter in the future be thousands of meters away? Anfan had an idea in his heart that he could kill this Sea King, but this idea was very dangerous, and if it was wrong, he would have to die. To bet or not to bet? Just when Anfan was entangled. Porphyrus. Quote. Suddenly, The whole body of the Sea King rioted, the speed was agile and fast, opened the bloody mouth, and swallowed Fan in one gulp. There was no choice but to gamble. The Sea King's big mouth swallowed Fan with a grunt, but Fan's body size was obviously not enough for the Sea King to make a sound of swallowing food, and there was a large amount of seawater with Fan being swallowed. Seeing the humans who provoked themselves being eaten, the Sea Kings roared proudly again, letting out a pleasant sound. Fan, who was swallowed, stood in the stomach of the Sea King, looked around with a fierce look, shouted, and quickly slashed out 2 knives of a cross model above. Each knife brought out a scarlet sword chi, and the sword chi instantly penetrated the stomach and body of the Sea King. The Sea Kings were about to dive back to the sea to digest the food in their bodies after a long roar, when they suddenly felt a pain in their stomachs, and the severe pain caused by it suddenly made the Sea King's bodies twist up, and a heart-rending scream suddenly sounded. The Sea King's eyes were blood red, and I saw that the tough scale armor on its back suddenly cracked, and a large amount of scarlet blood came out. Fishman Island. Are you sure you're here? So why don't you see anyone? Just before Fan and Princess Shirahoshi left Fishman Island and entered the sea, a large number of Fishman soldiers and fish people were already covered at this time. Yes, Lord King, I saw with my own eyes a human boy with Princess Shirahoshi. One of the fishmen said to Neptune in horror that he had seen it before, and why was it gone? Lord King, this human boy probably took Princess Shirahoshi as a slave. A fish man nearby said. Shut up, it's 10,000 meters under the sea. If you go out, you won't be crushed into pieces by the water, and you will get lost in the sea. Quote. Neptune turned around and roared. He didn't have an answer in his heart now. Here as the front is through the coating into the deep sea, there is only one road behind. If they go back, they will definitely encounter it, but they haven't encountered it, and they have searched for the entire Fishman Island, and they have not found any trace of Anfin and White Star. Is it really as these fishmen say, that son of Sin took Princess Shirahoshi and sold her as a slave? He won't take this kind of funny joke seriously, not to mention that the son of Sin is wanted by the world government. I don't know how many people want to hold his head. Just say that the sea is 10,000 meters deep, and if you are not crushed by the water, you will get lost in the sea and float all the way up 10,000 meters. You must know that the sea is changeable and full of weirdness. Who knows what will happen, and you will lose your life at once. Only a stupid person would think of this, but if this is the case, why do the figures of the two seem to evaporate from the bottom of the sea? Neptune's mind was full of confusion and his heart was very agitated. Neptune, don't worry, it's going to be fine. Princess Otahime, who was beside her, saw the irritability in Neptune's heart and comforted her. She was also shocked by Fan taking away Bai Xing, although she wondered why the guards didn't come to report, but she couldn't think about it so much, and hurriedly searched everywhere. Obviously, the harvest was fruitless, and she didn't catch a trace of Fan and her daughter. But fortunately, Princess Otahime didn't worry too much, because Fan she believed in might be the reason for more contact with Fan, and she didn't believe that Fan would harm his unusually beloved sister. What's that? Suddenly, a sharp-eyed fish-man soldier screamed when he noticed something rapidly rowing in the deep sea outside. What? All the fishmen looked up. That's... Princess Otahime's eyes narrowed slightly, staring at a pale red light that quickly slashed, and the domineering color continued to expand and probe. It's Shirahoshi. Quote, when Princess Otahime saw that pale red light, she was suddenly struck by lightning, and hurriedly exclaimed, catch her quickly. Quote, what? Princess Shirahoshi. The fishman was shocked. The pale red light was getting closer and closer, and Neptune heard Princess Otahime's words, and hurriedly raised his hands to catch Shirahoshi, who would die if he hit something hard at that speed. But at this moment, the White Star, which was speeding in the seawater, suddenly shook, and its speed directly and slowly decreased by 10 times, becoming extremely slow, and fell into Fishman Island unharmed. This change has taken the fish people by surprise. What is the situation? Shirahoshi, are you all right? Quote, Shirahoshi, what's wrong with you? Neptune didn't care why, and rushed directly to Princess Otahime, hugging the unconscious Princess Shirahoshi. Hurry up and save my brother, he's fighting with the Sea Kings, go and save him. Bai Xing muttered, and after a few words, he was gone. What? Neptune didn't hear. Fan was in danger, and when he met the Sea King, he sent Bai Xing back first. Quote, Princess Odahime's sights and hearings are domineering, and she can hear the inner voices of others, and she can hear what Shirahoshi said in her heart at once. What? Suddenly, Neptune's face became gloomy. Why don't we go out and save Anfin? Princess Odahime said at this time. What to save? How can we save? Neptune said with an ugly face, it's up to us to go, it's not enough to even stuff the Sea King's teeth, not to mention that the sea is so big, how do we know where that Anfin is? Quote. But, Princess Odahime was about to say something, when the fishmen around her shouted. Princess Odahime, don't be so kind-hearted, what's the use of you being so good to them? But he saved Shirahoshi. Princess Odahime said, humans are very treacherous, this may be his pretense, he kidnapped Princess Shirahoshi, and was targeted by the Sea King, and he had no choice but to send Princess Shirahoshi back, just to ask us to save him. Quote. That's it, Princess Odahime. The lives of our fishmen are more precious than human lives. Quote. If you save him, you will be in trouble if you try to do anything in the future. Quote. Humans are all a pack of wild wolves, wolf-hearted and dog-hearted things. Some of the fishmen said loudly, their tone full of bitterness, and their tone buried with discrimination and hatred against humans. At this time, the fishman soldiers also looked at each other, and then said, Princess Odahime, we will not save humanity with our lives. Quote. Even if you kill yourself, you won't save such a hateful human being. Quote. The fish people we are defending are not humans, and we are not obligated to save them. Quote. If we really need to save him, then we won't be fishman soldiers. Quote. Princess Odahime looked at these fishmen and said evil words, as if she wished for Anfin to die, and her heart was slightly bitter. Princess Shirahoshi is safe and sound, let's retreat. Quote. Neptune frowned, waved his hand, and didn't say anything. He didn't care so much about Anfin. Life and death were fateful, and if he wanted to sacrifice his life to save him, he still couldn't do it, not to mention that he had done enough. Shall we allow you to go? At this moment, an unusually violent word came into everyone's ears. Before they could react, a figure suddenly rushed in from the deep sea, and an afterimage swept by, and the heads of more than a dozen fishmen suddenly burst into pieces. A group of disgusting fish people, speaking so nobly, actually have an extremely low self-esteem in their bones, a bunch of cheap bones. Anfin stood in front of these fishmen, his face full of disgust. He had just returned, and he had heard something that made his otherwise happy mood worse at once. All the fishmen were shocked and looked at the corpses of more than a dozen fishmen who had been bloodily disposed of by Anfin. How dare you kill us fishmen? The fishman soldier's eyes turned blood red and looked at Anfin. How about I kill me? Anfin's fierce eyes swept away, and he slapped him in the air, and the fishman soldier's head was directly turned 360 degrees, and he was killed with a slap. Seeing their comrades being killed, all the fishman soldiers suddenly surged with grief and indignation. You hateful human boy killed us fishman soldiers. Quote. You are looking for death, and you must sacrifice him with your blood. Quote. Undeterred by Anfin's brutal methods, the fishman soldiers threatened to take revenge. Stop me. Neptune reached out and shouted angrily. Don't stop us, Lord King, we want revenge, this human boy actually killed our fishman, it's so hateful. Quote. He's the son of sin with a reward of 1 billion, are you going to die? Exclaimed Princess Odahime. As soon as these words came out, all the fishmen were stupid, and the fishman soldiers looked at Princess Odahime stupidly. Billion bounty, sons of sin, Princess Odahime, you are you kidding? He's just a human imp, how can he be 1 billion? Stammered a fish man with a forced laugh. Princess Odahime took a deep breath as she pulled out a newspaper and a bounty order. Anfin, the son of sin, is charged with leading a prisoner to riot, destroying and advancing the city's prison, and the crime is extremely heinous, offering a reward of 1 billion baileys and providing clues of 100 million baileys. Quote. The charges in the newspaper, the 1 on the bounty, and the 9 zeros in the back directly blind the eyes of all the fishmen. I'm not mistaken. It's really 10E. Quote. How is it possible that this human boy actually destroyed the advanced city prison? Quote. We actually provoked a 10E heinous sea thief. All the fishmen looked at Anfin with fearful eyes, and they were all frightened to take a step back, cold sweat on their foreheads, they no longer had the courage of resentment before, and there was only endless fear in their hearts. And Fan glanced at them coldly and said, "A bunch of garbage, what's the matter? Come, aren't you going to kill me? Sacrifice your people with my blood." Quote. Speaking of the back, it is full of violent killing intent. Leave them alone. Neptune's face was all black at this time, and he bowed his head and said. And Fan smiled coldly, "You did save me, but it was you, not them, understand?" Quote. "You don't dare to do it, so it's time for me to come." And Fan fiercely glanced at the few fishman soldiers who shouted the loudest just now, and his terrifying eyes almost swallowed them alive. "Stop, this is Whitebeard's territory, and we are all protected by Whitebeard," Princess Otahime exclaimed urgently. As soon as these words came out, all the fishmen's eyes lit up. Yes. They were blessed by Whitebeard. Whitebeard was the strongest man in the world, and the bounty was 12E. Hearing this, and Fan was slightly stunned, and then his face was full of ridicule. "Whitebeard? Oh, I forgot, he's not a simple human, he has the blood of the giants in his veins." Quote. "But so what? Can Whitebeard manage to come here? Do you really think that pulling the tiger skin is the king? You really think too much, or let me die." Quote. "Princess Otahime, you get out of the way at the end. No, I will never allow you to hurt my fellow citizens." Princess Otahime stood in front of Fan and stretched out her hands to stop him stubbornly. "And Fan, for the sake of Shirahoshi, will you let them go?" Princess Otahime pleaded. And Fan's brows were furrowed, and his face was covered with frost. Yo, I heard me right, someone didn't take Daddy seriously." At this moment, a laugh rang out. I saw a man dressed in a costume of the opposite gender, wearing a pink kimono, a Japanese-style red cloth with spots tied irregularly around his waist, painted with lipstick, a pale face and tied-up hair, and a shark-fish man with a round body, a garlic head erected, and a blue-sleeved white shirt appeared, swaggering. "Neptune, it's Daddy's birthday, do you have any cake here?" shouted the shark man. "Neptune, it's Daddy's birthday, do you have any cake here?" the shark shouted. After the shark-fish man finished shouting, he was slightly stunned, and looked at the large number of fishmen gathered in front of him. "What is going on? What's wrong? Namur, Azang, you're here." Neptune was slightly stunned, then shouted with joy. The man in Japanese clothes moved his nose and frowned. "What's the matter? How do I smell blood? Dead." The shark man frowned, looked at the more than a dozen headless corpses, and instantly exploded, roaring angrily, "What's the matter? Why are so many fishmen dead?" As soon as the words came out of his mouth, the fish man cried as if he had grasped a life-saving straw, "Lord Namur, there are humans who kill us fishmen." "Who?" the shark man suddenly roared as if he had been stepped on by a cat's tail. "He is also a fish man, but because he has been out of the world for too long, and has a large number of good brothers, he does not have the same hatred for humans as ordinary fish people, but he is still quite sensitive to humans abusing and killing their fish people." All the fishmen looked at Anfan. The shark man's fierce gaze swept towards Anfan, and he said angrily, "Did you torture and kill our fish man?" "Whitebeard pirates." Anfan coldly glanced at the white-bearded skull that had a crescent moon curved upwards on their clothes. He knew these two people, and in the future, they would be famous captain-level figures, the 8th captain, Namur, and the 16th captain, Yizang. But unfortunately, it's still just a small role. It's good that you know, this Fish-Man Island is a territory protected by the Whitebeard pirates, and you dare to kill people wantonly on it. Do you know that this is provoking our Whitebeard pirates? And Fan looked at him with a frosty face and said, "So what?" This sentence stunned Namur. "So what? What about that? Doesn't this kid know that the territory declared by Whitebeard's father is sacred and inviolable? Whoever dares to invade is looking for death. Don't pretend to be ignorant to get by. It's okay to say that you didn't kill someone on Daddy's territory, but if you kill someone, then you can't pass the test casually, you have to take out your own blood to appease Daddy's anger." Boy, Namuel was about to say something, but Azang, who was beside him, suddenly reached out and grabbed him. "What are you doing with Izo? This kid is kind of familiar." Azang frowned and looked Anfan up and down, muttering. Hearing this, Namur was stunned, and looked at Anfan with some doubts, and the more he looked, the more he was a little surprised, and then he suddenly screamed. "This kid is a little familiar, a teenager. Namur clapped his hands and suddenly realized. Izo nodded. Yes. Quote, it's your sister. Azang suddenly slapped the shark on the head and said angrily, everyone knows this. Quote, watching the performance of the two of them, a cold sweat hung on the fishman's forehead. Two idiots. And Fan looked at them with a blue face, and he actually went back to some funny scenes when he watched One Piece. Yizang Erling immediately heard what Fan said, and immediately became furious. What are you talking about, little ghost? I say you're idiots. Quote, what are you talking about? Namur glared at Anfin with wide eyes, and he said angrily, you idiot. Who does the idiot say? Idiot said you. The two said in unison, and they couldn't help but be stunned after speaking. And Fan didn't answer them anymore, he just looked at Neptune coldly and said, isn't it too stupid for you to use them to scare me? Quote, Neptune looked at the two men in a cold sweat, and the thought in his mind that these two were idiots also occurred in his mind. You abominable little imp, you're looking for death. Izo said angrily, picking up two guns in his hands. Get out. Quote, and Fan suddenly turned into an afterimage and appeared in front of him, and a kick flew out with a violent face. You pervert, a man dressed like a Japanese girl, give me the origin. Quote, as he spoke, he kicked Azang with a powerful kick, and suddenly the terrifying impact sent Azang flying, and Namul directly crashed into a nearby house. Kill the four of them, and there will be nothing left, otherwise. And Fan's eyes swept coldly towards the four fish-man soldiers who wanted to sacrifice their comrades with his blood. At this time, the four fish-man soldiers were terrified, especially in Fan's cold eyes that did not fluctuate at all. Their legs trembled, and a trace of blue and yellow appeared on their legs and shoulders. And Fan suddenly showed a sarcastic smile, and he sneered, spineless thing, Neptune, your soldier is such a coward, and you want to kill me to commemorate your comrades, your courage just now has been eaten by dogs. Quote, Neptune looked at the four fish-man soldiers with a sad face. He himself now had a kind of killing intent towards them, and he wanted to cut off their heads and lose face at his grandmother's house. Get out. Kill you, don't get my knife dirty. And Fan waved his hand, turned around and looked disgusted. In fact, when Princess Otahime came forward to plead, he had already given up in his heart, but he was very angry at those fish people who were so mocking and arrogant, so he planned to scare them, and as a result, he directly scared them out of Shang. A group of timid soldiers still want to defend the country and avenge their comrades, so let's go eat Shang. And Fan thought with disdain in his heart. In fact, he didn't know how shocking his terrifying bounty was, and the number of words that ordinary people didn't dare to think about at all, especially the fierce attack just now, was even more terrifying. Princess Otahime, thank you for taking care of me when I was seriously injured. I owe you a favor, and if there is anything to solve in the future, you can come to me. And Fan walked towards Princess Otahime, and his tense face eased. Princess Otahime looked at Fan with a complicated face. She didn't know what to say. Say thank you. And Fan was the one who killed him. Say no thanks. People can say that there is anything they can ask him for help in the future, but they are not people at either end, so it is better to be silent. Are your injuries healed? Princess Otahime suddenly thought of something, and looked at Fan with some surprise. Only then did she realize that Fan's face was already a pale red with chi and blood, and it was not pale at all. Okay, 8 or 9 points. And Fan smiled slightly, for this Princess Otahime who was willing to help without relatives and for no reason, and silently took care of him for half a year in a coma, he was still very grateful in his heart. If it weren't for Shirahoshi and Princess Otahime, he didn't dare to imagine if he would still be alive. Seeing Fan's smile that belonged to that kind of boy, the fish people around him couldn't believe that this boy was the murderous bear child before. The difference was too big. White Star. And Fan's gaze swept to the cute little mermaid who was sleeping in Otahime's arms, and a flip in his hand appeared, and a small round ball emitting a pale blue-silver light appeared in his palm. This is. Princess Otahime's eyes widened. The meatballs you want to eat. My brother actually promised to give you them, that is not forgotten. And Fan put the light blue energy ball in his hand into Bai Xingxiao's mouth. That's right. This energy ball is part of Fan's killing of the Sea Kings. And Fan's injuries are too serious, the energy required is very huge. And he almost has to completely devour the Sea Kings to heal, but when he was devouring, he thought that he promised to give Bai Xing meatballs, so he divided a part of it, only 8 or 9 points of the whole body were recovered, and the remaining 1 point was slowly anyway, the ability to recover the fruit has been recovered, and now he is healing himself all the time, and his strength can be fully exerted, which is nothing at all. What did you give her? Princess Otahime looked at Anfan blankly. She didn't stop it just now because she sensed Anfan's kindness. Anfan kept silent, shook his head with a smile and said, I didn't harm her, she got a huge benefit, but she will show it slowly in the future. Quote. Because Anfan directly transformed the Sea King with the devouring ability, he can take effect immediately, while Bai Xing did not eat the infinite fruit and did not have the devouring ability, so he could not quickly digest this amazing energy, and he could only absorb it slowly by waiting for time to consume. As for what effect would occur, this would not be known until later. As for Anfans, they are all used to heal injuries. After I leave, I must not let Shirahoshi shed tears, otherwise something very serious will happen. If it falls, no matter what you see, it must be kept strictly secret, otherwise it will be a huge disaster if it spreads. Quote. Anfan whispered, and only Princess Otahime and Neptune heard it. The two were a little stunned, they didn't understand what Anfan said, and just wanted to ask. Anfan's figure had already appeared far away. You two are here at the right time. I want you to do me a favor. Anfan grabbed Namuel and Azang who had fallen to the ground, and smiled weirdly. Otherwise, you two will send me to hell. Quote. What do you want to do? The two of them were covered in blood, and looked at Anfan in horror. This kind of strength is probably no less than their captain. It's simple, take me out of Fishman Island. Quote. Ah, yes, now, we haven't bought a cake for Daddy yet. Quote. How could someone like Whitebeard eat cake, you two idiots? Quote. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.